The Lord of the Depths, a Game of Thrones tale. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, No Business Without Fraud. The next morning, Hago arrived at the dock. After boarding the Sea Emperor, Newgate met Hago. As soon as they met, Hago looked happy for Newgate. "Captain Newgate, I have good news." Newgate was a little surprised. "Your wife gave birth." What kind of news could make him so happy? "We have gathered a total of 2,196 unsullied, 25 gold dragons each. What do you think?" 2,200? Newgate was a little surprised. He didn't expect Hago to be able to gather so many unsullied. With so many, there won't be any problems with the quality, right? Newgate suspected that Hago had taken out sick or old unsullied to make up the number. After all, he was a slave before, and he knew too well the treachery of these slave owners. Hago patted his chest and said, "I guarantee there will be no problem. If you want them, I can bring them tonight. You can check them yourself. If they are not good, just don't give them away." Newgate said with a smile, "What are you talking about? We want them all. Let's trade tonight. How about 2194, 2196 unsullied?" Hago laughed loudly and said, "No, let's count them as 2180. The extra 16 will be considered as my gifts." For Hago, the unsullied he got from other small slave owners were only 23 gold dragons. With more than 2,000 unsullied, Hago could easily earn more than 4,000 gold dragons. Newgate warmly invited Hago to stay for a drink, but Hago refused, saying that he still had to prepare for the transaction, and left in a hurry. After seeing Hago off, Newgate went directly to the Palace of Poseidon, which was the cabin of the Poseidon, which was decorated with a large number of rare treasures. Jack was resting on a huge sapphire throne, wearing the scarlet dragon crown given by the unknown Karth young woman. Newgate came to Jack and whispered, "Your Majesty, Hago has 2,196 unsullied. He will charge 2,180 gold dragons each, 25 gold dragons each, a total of 54,500 gold dragons." Jack nodded. This price was not bad. Last night, he sent people to find out the opinions of several great philanthropists, and finally these great philanthropists were only willing to reduce the price to 29 gold dragons. But Jack knew that there was no large-scale war in Essos recently, and the sales of unsullied had declined, so these great philanthropists had a lot of unsullied, and they still had more than 10,000 reserve unsullied. Even so, they were still unwilling to reduce the price. Jack originally prepared 200,000 to transform the merchant ship, but now he changed his mind and prepared to buy more unsullied. In addition to the more than 2,000 points in Hago's hands, he also reserved 100,000 gold dragons worth of unsullied from several great philanthropists in Astapa. 100,000 gold dragons bought a total of 3,450 unsullied. Originally, he could only buy 3,448, but the group of benefactors generously gave him 2. As a thank you, Jack decided to visit the homes of these benefactors when Dina is liberated Astapa. For this reason, Jack has sent people to inquire about whether these benefactors have any information about small treasuries. There are 8,000 unsullied and 14,000 reserve unsullied in the whole of Astapa. Jack was originally planning to buy 10,000 unsullied, but later Jack was worried that, after buying all the finished unsullied, Dana's life trajectory would change. Without the unsullied, Slavers Bay might not be in chaos, and Essos would not be in chaos, and Jack himself would not be able to fish in troubled waters and make a fortune from the war. Moreover, the 200 ships under Jack's command consume a lot of supplies every day, and Jack has to keep about 100,000 to buy some supplies. So after much consideration, Jack chose to buy about 150,000 unsullied, but Hago only wanted 25 gold dragons, so Jack bought a few more, a total of 5,646 unsullied. When the transaction is completed, plus the 1,228 unsullied Jack already has, the number of unsullied under his command will reach an astonishing 6,874, nearly 7,000 unsullied. In addition to the sea guard formed by Jack himself, the number of armed soldiers under his command will reach 8,000. This strength is no match for some city-states in Essos. However, with so many people, the daily consumption of materials is also astronomical, and Jack must quickly establish the first archipelago base. Soon the night fell, and Hago arrived as scheduled with 2,200 unsullied. Hago selected 4 from the reserve, to make up an integer. I have selected 4 excellent unsullied from the reserve, to make up an integer for you. If you want to buy next time, remember to come to me. The price is absolutely right. Jack looked at Hago, who was smiling in front of him, and laughed in his heart. You should survive Daenerys' knife first. Okay, next time I buy, I will give priority to your goods. The quality is really good. Then dozens of unsullied appeared, and they began to help the unsullied on the scene, to untie the slave collars. Hago looked at this scene with a little surprise, and finally couldn't help but remind him, it's not a good thing to cut off the collars of slaves. It will make them think too much, and forget that they are slaves. Jack smiled and waved his hand. It's okay, I can control them. Hago didn't say anything when he saw this. Anyway, the goods had been sold. Even if this group of unsullied ran away, it couldn't be blamed on him. At noon the next day, Jack also completed the transaction with several big philanthropists and successfully obtained 3,450 unsullied. Jack then dispersed the 5,650 unsullied and incorporated them into the original 1,228 unsullied army. After redistributing the unsullied troops, Jack kept 2,000 unsullied for himself, and then asked Newgate to go to Meereen and Young K to buy a batch of bed slaves and skill slaves who could reproduce normally, escorted by the remaining unsullied, to explore the Seychelles Islands first. He handed a nautical chart to Newgate. After approaching the Seychelles, you must follow the route on the nautical chart, otherwise it will be very dangerous, understand? This nautical chart was drawn by Jack, based on Poseidon's reminder, and it was quite detailed. Newgate solemnly put away the nautical chart. He trusted Jack 100%. He gained dignity from Jack. Even if Jack asked him to go to the sea to fight sharks alone, he would not hesitate at all. As for Jack, he would not use people he suspected, and he would not doubt people he used. He believed that Newgate would not betray him. How could he become a great man if he was timid? Even if Newgate really took his people away and became independent, there was still Poseidon. Even if Newgate ran to the ends of the earth, he would be caught. After receiving the order, Newgate immediately took the entire Atlantis, including all the ships of the Poseidon, and left Astapa. Jack, with 2,000 unsullied, settled down near Astapa, just waiting for Daenerys to arrive and make a fortune. Just thinking about the savings of the slave owners of Astapa for hundreds of years made Jack a little excited. With this money, he could quickly develop the archipelago base and convert all his merchant ships into warships. Chapter 27, The Bible of the Pure Love Warrior. 2 in 1. Half a month passed in a flash. Astapa, the Colosseum. Jack sat in the stands of the first circle waiting for the fight to begin, but judging from the bustling crowd around him, this fight was almost nothing to watch. The surrounding Colosseums were all bustling with people, and the huge crowds formed a huge contrast with this place. But this just happened to suit Jack's idea. He didn't like crowded places, but he wanted to see the real Colosseum. It just so happened that this fight without highlights perfectly met Jack's requirements. While Jack was waiting, several ladies came to sit beside Jack. These 3 young women were about 30 years old, with round figures and beautiful faces. The 3 of them originally planned to go to another Colosseum, but when they saw Jack bringing a few unsullied to this less seen Colosseum, they became interested. They had never seen this unfamiliar handsome boy, who looked only about 16 or 17 years old, and was obviously not a local. But his handsome and tough face and tall figure made them a little moved. Jack watched this scene without saying anything. During this period, he had played with several noble ladies. Of course, for those noble ladies, he was the one being played, but both sides had a lot of fun. And the noble ladies here played very lavishly. More importantly, these noble ladies had high standards, which made their cars well maintained. Then the 4 people found the owner of the arena, and booked a separate box. This was at the bottom of the circular arena. but it was slightly higher than the arena, which was the most suitable place to watch the fight, and it could also isolate the voices and sights of other people. Of course, the money for the box was paid by these women. It happened that the fight in the arena began to enter the preparation stage, and a middle-aged man in his 30s walked into the arena. A woman lay in Jack's arms and introduced, "This slave is called Jet. He was a carpenter's skill slave before. Guess what? This slave fell in love with the master's daughter. It's so funny. How dare he, a slave, fall in love with the daughter of a kind master?" Another woman whose headlights were turned up looked playful and mocking. Jack smiled and asked, "What happened next?" The slave wanted to elope with the master's daughter, and the girl was blinded by love for a moment and actually stole a bag of gold dragons to elope with the slave. Love-brained? Jack said what he thought. It's not to laugh at this love, but the approach is a bit childish. If you elope, you must plan it carefully, and the destination, money, and transportation must be carefully planned. Love-brained? That's a good word. Then, they were discovered by another slave, who told the good master about it. The good master was furious, and wanted to execute the two of them directly. After all, the good master had many daughters. After knowing this, the two fled overnight, but were finally stopped by other slave owners at the dock. Everyone was watching the joke. In the end, facing the rain of arrows, the girl stood in front of the man, and was shot into a female hedgehog. It's really not worth it. Marrying any slave owner can guarantee wealth and prosperity for the rest of your life. In general, in such marriages, the husband and wife play with each other, and it is rare for love and marriage to coexist. In the end, the man was heartbroken and was captured alive. He has been fighting with others in the arena. In my opinion, this slave still doesn't love the girl, otherwise he would have chosen to die with her long ago. But the most interesting thing is that the owner of this arena now is the slave who informed on the matter back then. In 12 years, he has gone from a slave to a businessman. After listening to the young woman's story, Jack also understood what happened. He had heard that love is always tragic, not to mention the story of a slave boy and a noble daughter. Looking at the man who pierced the enemy's throat with a spear on the field, Jack began to think. It goes without saying that he could go from a carpenter to a 12-year veteran in the arena. The only reason he could persist was probably revenge. In the following battles, the man almost never defeated his opponent in more than 3 rounds. The women around Jack were extremely bored. "It's so boring. We can't even afford a combat slave. This arena should be closed down as soon as possible." After saying that, the 3 of them got up and started to put on their clothes. After putting on their clothes, the woman threw a coquettish eye at Jack. "Sisters will leave first. You have enough capital and good skills. Sisters like you very much." As the 3 unknown women left, Jack also put on his clothes. Jack found the owner of the arena, a lean middle-aged man in his 40s. "I want to buy Jet. Please make an offer." Jack said straight to the point. A flash of surprise flashed across Daedalus' eyes. This small arena had been running out of money for a long time, and they were dealing with their slaves recently. Jet was the hardest one to sell. It was because Jet had become nervous since Martha's death, and his whole person was not normal, but Jet's fighting ability was very strong, and Daedalus didn't want to sell it cheaply. "How about this? You give me 50 gold dragons, and I will sell it to you at a loss." Daedalus saw that Jack liked Jet very much, and he opened his mouth directly. Jack threw out a gold dragon directly. "That's all. I just bought thousands of unsullied. I advise you to be less worried, so as not to walk dangerously at night." Daedalus' eyelids jumped. "Bought thousands of unsullied? Are you Mr. Jack Poseidon?" Daedalus asked cautiously. "Slave owners are slave owners. Good masters are good masters. Slave owners are more businessmen, and good masters, great masters, and wise masters are nobles." Recently, word has spread among the good masters and even among the slave owners that a grudge named Jack Poseidon has cleared the good master's backlog of unsullied. "Do you know me?" Jack asked curiously. "Yes, of course I know you. Your wealth and generosity are well known in Astapa." Daedalus took Jack to the cell where Jet was imprisoned. Daedalus stepped forward and said, "Jet, there is a big customer who wants to buy you. This noble master is very rich. You may have a chance to become rich in the future." Although he said nice words, Daedalus did not hide the sarcasm on his face. I also want to thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have been a slave all my life. We are all slaves. Why does that damn Martha treat you differently? Oh, maybe I should call her by her nickname, the female hedgehog. Ha ha ha. Jack stared at Daedalus' back, his eyes shining, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Jack looked at Daedalus coldly without saying anything. Over the years, he had heard such ridicule countless times. From the initial rage, now only revenge remained in his heart. He could easily keep a blank expression. Handing the chain that tied Jet to Jack, Daedalus was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. While complimenting Jack, he sent Jack out of the arena. Back to the camp outside the city. Many merchants had gathered here. People need to eat, drink, defecate and urinate, not to mention 2,000 unsullied. This was exactly what Jack wanted, and there was no need to send people around. The first thing Jack did after returning to the camp was to open the chain around Jet's neck. From now on, you will be one of my bodyguards, and no longer a slave. Understand? Jet still looked at Jack expressionlessly, as if he was not interested in whether he was a slave or not. Then Jack asked several unsullied to take Jet to take a bath. The stench on Jet's body was really unbearable. At midnight, the whole camp was filled with the chirping of insects except for the neat footsteps of the patrolling unsullied. In a small tent, Jet suddenly opened his eyes, then quietly stood up. After looking around, he found that there were no unsullied patrolling nearby, so he was ready to slip away. But as soon as Jet stepped out of the tent, Jack's voice came from the side. Want to take revenge? Jack had already expected what Jet was going to do, especially after Jack untied the chains on Jet. Jet didn't say anything, but nodded firmly. Jet thought this was his last chance for revenge. Even if he couldn't take revenge on Martha's kind father, he had to at least kill Daedalus. This was a nightmare that had troubled him for 12 years. He was afraid that after Jack took him away, he would never come back or find Daedalus. How do you take revenge? You have no armor, no weapons, and Daedalus is followed by several gladiators in leather armor. Do you think you can succeed? Joe was silent for a while, and for the first time ever, he spoke. His voice was hoarse, just like the brakes of the 28 bar in Jack's family in his previous life. I have to go, otherwise there will be no chance. Jack nodded slightly. If you don't go today, you really won't have a chance, because it's noon now, and in a few minutes it will be the next morning. But there will be opportunities on the second day, the third day, the fourth day, and every day after that. There is no need to rush now. I know you are eager to take revenge, but you have no chance of success this way, so why not wait a little longer? But there is no chance if I continue to wait, right? While I'm still in my prime, while I'm not old yet. Jack waved his hand, motioning Jet to follow him. Jet hesitated for a moment and chose to follow Jet into the tent. At this time, the table in the tent was full of wine and meat. Jack motioned Jet to sit down. The two sat opposite each other, and Jet looked a little uncomfortable. He didn't know what Jack was up to. In his eyes, Jack was a slave owner. Why don't you eat? Jack looked at Jet. Are you worried about poison? Please, it's really not worth my money to buy a portion of poison to kill you. My little sister can easily kill you, of course, with the sword in her hand, but it doesn't matter. Seeing that Jet didn't eat, Jack tore off a chicken leg for himself, took a big bite and said, the food that slaves eat is almost the same as pig food. Are you really not going to eat it? Jet swallowed his saliva, and then couldn't help eating and drinking in big mouthfuls. Jack ate the chicken leg in his hand slowly, and looked at Jet at the same time. Jet really fits the role of bodyguard in Jack's mind. With a height of 1.9 meters, his body is full of muscles and scars. It's hard to imagine what he has experienced in the past 12 years. The only sounds left in the tent were chewing food and swallowing fine wine. After eating for half an hour, Jet patted his stomach with satisfaction. After eating a lot of fish and meat, there was a lot more oil in his stomach, and the haggardness and weakness on his face disappeared. Obviously, his condition has recovered well. After seeing Jet finish his meal, Jack asked, you have no chance of success in revenge by yourself. I will help you to get revenge. How about that? Jet did not answer, but asked, what do you want? Everything. Everything? Jack nodded. Everything of yours. Body, soul, loyalty, sword, everything. Deal. Jen agreed to Jack's terms without hesitation. To him, Jack's terms were the same as nothing. He was still wondering what Jack wanted from him, but he didn't expect that it was just for his use. For Jen, who had nothing, even if Jack didn't help him get revenge, he was still a slave and had to obey Jack's orders. "Why do you want to help me?" Jen asked. In his opinion, if Jack wanted him to work hard, there was no need to do so. "Why?" Jack asked back. "Who do you think I am? A slave owner? I'm not a slave owner. I bought you because I was attracted by your fighting ability, and I'm also interested in your experience. But you are not my slave. You are my guard, and I want a loyal guard, not a slave who thinks about escaping for revenge every day. Do I have to lock your feet every night?" Jed didn't say anything. He already understood what Jack meant. "You are a good person." Jack poured himself a glass of wine. "No need to give me a good guy card. I don't need it. Don't rush for revenge. I estimate that Astapa will be in chaos in the next few months, and there will naturally be a chance then." Jess stood up and walked in front of Jack and knelt down with a thud. "Master, Jen offers all his loyalty to you." This was the second time Jen knelt down willingly. The first time was when his first master promised to return his freedom, but in the end he was sold to Martha's father. "Don't call me master. I told you I don't have any slaves." "Understood, master. It's up to you. I'll tell you a story. His story is similar to yours, but there are many differences. His name is Vigo." Then Jack began to brag about the story of the ruined king. For a pure love warrior, Vigo's deeds were as fascinating as the Bible. And Jack also liked it when others paid full attention to him bragging. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Birist and Selmy. Astapa, Doc. After getting off the boat, Daenerys looked around Astapa curiously. "Is there a world famous infantry corps here?" The dilapidated walls and land did not look so prosperous. "Are the rumored Unsullied really strong?" Daenerys was a little skeptical about this. After all, the walls of Astapa were really far worse than those of Karth. Jorah vowed to assure her, "Don't worry, Khaleesi. I promise that the Unsullied Corps will not let you down." "I hope so." At this moment, Daenerys frowned, and a little girl appeared not far away. The little girl smiled innocently, then took out a capsule toy and handed it to Daenerys. Seeing this, Daenerys thought it was a gift from the little girl. The little girl twisted it with her bare hands, indicating that Daenerys should open the capsule toy like her. Daenerys smiled and was about to open the capsule toy like the little girl, but was suddenly knocked off her hand by a man in a black robe. Then Jorah hurried forward and strangled the black-robed man's neck, and because of the black-robed man's attack, Dany accidentally tripped and fell to the ground, and the capsule in her hand also fell to the ground. There was a crack on the capsule, but in Dany's slightly surprised eyes, a scorpion with a green body and a human face crawled out. Daenerys finally realized that something was wrong at this time and shrank back frantically, but the scorpion crawled faster and was about to hurt Daenerys. An arrow shot and nailed the scorpion to the ground. Then another arrow pierced the girl in front of Daenerys, but the girl did not bleed after being pierced by the bow and arrow, but turned directly into a piece of clothing. At this time, the black-robed man rushed up and cut off the scorpion's head with a knife, and Jorah just reacted to what happened. At this time, the girl reappeared on a high platform and roared at Daenerys, and her dark blue lips and teeth made people feel cold. Then the girl turned and ran away, leaving Daenerys to say in shock, "Wizard." The little girl just now was the wizard's clone, which was also the scary part of the wizard. Since the magic was revived, their strange magic began to come in handy. On another high platform, Jack took back the bow and arrow in his hand with satisfaction. "Master, your archery has improved so fast that it is really surprising," Jess said. How did you learn to flatter?" Jack teased. "Just telling the truth, your archery has improved a lot." Jack shrugged. "Hard work will pay off, especially when the conditions are good." In recent months, Jack has been working hard to practice archery, so naturally he has made great progress. Then Jack brought Gen 4 Unsullied to Daenerys. Long time no see, Daenerys. Jack greeted. Hello, thank you, Jack. You're welcome. It's Milner, that you still remember me. Jack said politely. Then Jack looked at Barristan again. I have heard of your great name, Sir Barristan Selmy. Barristan frowned and looked at Jack. Do you know me? Are you a noble of the Seven Kingdoms? No, I'm just the son of a pirate, but I have heard many legendary stories of Westeros, such as Barristan the Fearless, Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, and so on. Barristan Selmy, this man was no worse than the Sword of the Morning when he was young. Although people said that the Sword of the Morning was slightly stronger than Barristan, there was no difference between the two in terms of deeds and glory. As for the specific situation, Jack was not clear. After all, the Sword of the Morning was dead, died in the hands of Eddard Stark, and also became the only stain in Eddard Stark's life. Barristan knelt on one knee. I'm Barristan Selmy, your father's guard. I swore to defend your family, but I failed. I ask for your forgiveness and permission to join your guard. Daenerys looked at Barristan in disbelief. She couldn't believe that one of the strongest warriors in the Seven Kingdoms would cross half the world to join her. At this time, she couldn't help but think of Jack's previous words, that Jorah was an undercover agent of the Iron Throne. Thinking of this, she decided to accept Barristan. No matter from which aspect, Barristan was worthy of being accepted by her. Barristan Selmy, your loyalty touches me. From today on, you are my queen's guard. Are you willing to swear to protect my safety? It is an honor, your majesty. Jack suddenly clapped his hands. Congratulations, Dany. Sir Barristan is a top warrior and has his own sense of honor. He is trustworthy. Listening to Jack's meaningful words, Daenerys' eyes sparkled. Yes, Jorah and Barristan are both trustworthy queen's guard. This sentence moved Jorah Mormont behind him to tears. What could be more touching than the trust of Her Majesty the Queen? Jack looked at Daenerys in surprise. Sure enough, preaching is useless, and broken bones are the best textbooks. And Daenerys at this time is obviously more mature than Jack's impression. At least this means of winning people's hearts is still okay. Didn't you see that Jorah behind her was almost moved to tears? Are you going to buy the Unsullied? Jack asked. Daenerys was a little surprised. How did you know? A princess of the former dynasty of Westeros, whose mission is to restore the country. What could be more important than a well-disciplined army? You are right. I'm here to buy the Unsullied. To restore the country, we need not only dragons, but also troops and ships. Chapter 29 Daenerys' Test. Dany looked at the Unsullied behind Jack and asked, how much did you buy the Unsullied for? 30 gold dragons each. Those good masters look at me like a begonged person. Jack said helplessly, like an honest man who dared not speak out after being slaughtered. 30 gold dragons? Daenerys couldn't believe it. 30 gold dragons for a slave? To be precise, it's a slave soldier. They don't know fear, will never desert in battle, and will absolutely obey your orders. The Unsullied are expensive, but they are indeed top-notch infantry. Even when facing the Dothraki cavalry charge, they are fearless. Hearing Jack's words, Daenerys pursed her lips. If calculated according to 30 gold dragons, even if she sold her ship, she could only buy 123 Unsullied. Seeing Daenerys' appearance, Jack changed the subject. Want to have a drink? My camp has the best wine from Slaver's Bay. Jack always had an honest smile on his face. With Jack's golden hair and handsome features, he looked like a warm brother next door. But Daenerys declined Jack, although she was a little addict and could not resist the temptation of male beauty. But now she still had to inquire about the news of the Unsullied in the city. Looking at the back of Dany leaving, Jack was not disappointed by Dany's refusal at all. He had no shortage of women. He wanted to play the dragon mother, but he was not in a hurry. Daenerys had a high vision for choosing a lover, and Jack absolutely met Dany's needs. He was confident that he could easily become Daenerys' knight. Whether it was appearance or power, Jack met the requirements perfectly. Like Dario, he dressed exaggeratedly in the original book, like a blue-haired killer, but even so he could still fascinate Daenerys with sweet words. Look at Jack again. He is powerful and handsome, especially the bloodline of Blackfyre gives Jack golden hair and lavender eyes, which attract Daenerys all the time. It's just that Jack makes Daenerys feel very dangerous, so in most cases, Dany always keeps enough vigilance against Jack. However, Daenerys herself is a woman with great physical needs, and she even had a lesbian relationship with her maid. As long as Daenerys controls 8,000 unsullied and becomes the queen of Slavers Bay, she will definitely choose suitable male favorites and lovers. Daario in the original book is a good example. Poor Big Bear Jorah was directly passed by Daenerys in terms of appearance. In fact, Jack is not only interested in Dany, but many women in the Game of Thrones are very attractive to Jack. For example, Margaery, the crooked-mouthed queen. Jack really wants to know if she will still have a crooked mouth in some situations. After Daenerys brought her men into the city, she contacted some slave owners and found that the price of the Unsullied was around 30 gold dragons. Especially after Jack cleared a wave of Unsullied inventory, many slave owners gave up the idea of lowering the price. Your Majesty, the Unsullied are too expensive. We can choose to buy some ordinary slaves for training, and then look for allies in Westeros. You must know that Westeros is not stable now. Barristan persuaded. He heard some news about Westeros on his way to Essos. Daenerys shook her head. Let me think about it. Let's find a place to stay first. Sir Barristan, tell Jack that I will hold a banquet tonight to thank him for saving my life. Understood, Your Majesty. Barristan took the order and left. Dany frowned slightly, thinking about how to accumulate enough capital. As for Barristan's suggestion of going to Westeros to find allies, Dany was very skeptical about the loyalty of the Seven Kingdoms. She was not in a hurry to return to Westeros until her dragons grew up or had their own army. At night, the moon had just come out, and Jack, led by Barristan, came to the place where Daenerys was holding a banquet. Dany was wearing a refreshing silk dress, revealing the V-cleavage on her chest, and her long silver white hair was scattered on her waist. She was extremely beautiful under the moonlight and torches. Jack couldn't help but glance at Daenerys twice more. Unlike in American TV series, Daenerys was beautiful at any time, not the kind that would ruin her appearance with a smile. Thank you for saving my life this morning, Jack. You are welcome to come. Jack waved his hand quickly. You are welcome. It's just a small favor. I happened to be strolling at the dock. No need to thank me. At this time, Jack quietly looked at the surrounding arrangements. It can be seen that Daenerys is very attentive, especially the expensive wine and food on the table. Jack suspected that Daenerys might have something to ask of him. After all, he bought thousands of Unsullied and had a little friendship with Daenerys. However, Jack did not point it out. Instead, he acted as if he knew nothing. At Dany's enthusiastic invitation, he drank and chatted. As a modern man, Jack naturally made Dany very happy. Soon Dany and Jack drank too much, but Dany was really a little drunk, while Jack was pretending. At this time, Daenerys didn't know when she had already pressed her body against Jack. Picking up a glass of wine, Daenerys drank it all in a depressed mood. Seeing this, Jack's eyes flashed with a gleam of light. If a woman sticks to you and shows a sullen expression, it is very likely that this girl will use the combination of beauty trap and self-torture trap. Sure enough, the two were still chatting about interesting things in life in the last second, and Daenerys began to complain in the next second. From being forced to marry the King of Horses at the age of 14, and then struggling for nearly 2 years, to now still not seeing the slightest hope of restoring the country. While Dany was recounting her tragic experience, mist began to appear in her eyes. Although Daenerys did ask Jack for help, her crying and tears were not fake. It can be said that she has not had any happy days in the past 10 years. As for why she didn't cry to Jorah or others, it must be because Jorah Mormont and other men were not good looking. As a face dog, Daenerys' different treatment of handsome guys and middle-aged old men is very obvious. You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Your eyes are as bright as stars. They won't look good if you cry. After a while, seeing that Jack had no intention of helping her, Daenerys couldn't hold back. Jack, do you think it is possible for me to take back the Iron Throne? Dany led the topic to her own cause of restoring the country. Of course, you have 3 dragons. When you grow up, I believe you can take back the broken Iron Throne stolen by the usurper. Jack almost said the broken chair, but fortunately he changed his words in time. But I don't have an army. Well, can I ask you to lend me some of the Unsullied? When I take back the Iron Throne, I will make you the Duke of the North, the Riverlands, and the Vale. Because Danny knew that Jack knew Westeros very well, she didn't explain too much and promised the Duke of the Three Places. Jack narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't expect Danny to be so bold that she gave away half of Westeros directly, especially the Riverlands and the Vale, both of which are good places. Although the former is often the center of the battlefield, it has fertile land for thousands of miles. The latter is also a paradise, easy to defend, and difficult to attack. As for the north, Jack has no interest in it at all. Not only is the climate bad, but the economy is also very poor, and he has to face the White Walkers and wildlings outside the Great Wall at all times. You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. I also want to help you, but the Unsullied in my hands have been arranged to other places. Daenerys' eyes darkened when she heard this. She knew that Jack was not so easy to fool. But Dany's face changed immediately and asked, "But what?" "But I can provide you with a way. In return, I only want the Vale. The Vale is a very good place. It is easy to defend and difficult to attack on land. It is close to the sea in the east and has a perfect geographical location." Chapter 30, Getting Something for Nothing. "But I have a way to let you get all the Unsullied for free," Jack said confidently. Daenerys pouted immediately, losing a bit of maturity and becoming a bit girlish, but then again, Dany seemed to be only 16 years old, and Jack was only 18 years old. "This is not funny. Good masters are not fools." Jack laughed. "Good masters are not fools, but they are very pedantic." Daenerys tilted her head slightly with a puzzled look on her face. "What does this have to do with the good master's pedantry? Astapa has been in business for hundreds of years. Over the past few hundred years, the good masters have always traded in exchange for money and goods, and no one has ever purchased the Unsullied and then directly attacked Astapa. But the fact that no one has done so does not mean that it is impossible. After the transaction is completed, the Unsullied will absolutely obey your orders. Even if it means killing the good masters who trained them, they will not hesitate to do so." Daenerys was stunned. "You mean that, after I buy the Unsullied, I will use them to occupy Astapa? But I don't have money, and the good masters won't sell them to me. Besides, if I don't buy all the Unsullied from the good masters also have Unsullied, and Astapa may not be so easy to occupy." At this time, Daenerys had not yet thought of using the dragon to get something for nothing. "Then why don't you buy all the Unsullied in the hands of the good master? I bought a batch of Unsullied before. Considering the replenishment speed of the Unsullied, the good master should still have 8,000 or 9,000 Unsullied, and there are also a large number of reserve Unsullied. You can exchange dragons for the Unsullied in the hands of the good master." "My children?" Daenerys looked reluctant. "They are my children. I can't sell them as goods." Jack waved his hand, signaling Daenerys not to get excited. "You also said that Drogon is your child, but the Unsullied are not the children of the good master. After the Unsullied are sold to you, they will obey your command, but will Drogon listen to the good master?" Daenerys suddenly came to her senses. She understood how Jack wanted to get something for nothing. To put it bluntly, he was using the trading bug of the Unsullied to pit the good masters. But what? You also have dragons. Why don't you do it yourself?" In Daenerys' view, Jack also has dragons, and even Jack's dragons are more obedient and easier to deceive the good master. Because if you do this, you will be hostile to the entire slave bay, which is equivalent to destroying the rules of the game here for hundreds of years. Jack said half truthfully. In fact, Jack had thought about doing this, but the benefits of doing so were far less than letting Daenerys provoke the Essos War. And Jack wanted to quickly develop his own power, rather than playing any war games with these slave owners. Jack stood up and prepared to leave, and at the same time began to induce, "Think about it yourself. The slaves here live a life worse than death every day. Maybe they also hope that there will be a kind queen to lead them to break the shackles on their necks." After speaking, Jack left. Daenerys looked at Jack's back and kept thinking in her heart, and finally decided to go and see what the life of the slaves is like tomorrow. If the slaves are really living a life worse than death and expect someone to lead them to regain their freedom, then she doesn't mind being a slave liberator. Not only for the freedom of the slaves, but also for herself. If she can really occupy the slave bay, she will have enough wealth and population to convert into warships and troops. In the original novel, Daenerys liberated the slaves in the 3 cities of Slavers Bay. Perhaps most of the reason was because of her kindness, but there must have been considerations of wealth and population. However, Daenerys, who had no political experience, made a mess of the governance of Slavers Bay. At the same time, Westeros was also not peaceful. King's Landing, the Prime Minister's Tower of the Red Keep. Eddard frowned as he looked at the records in the book. He suddenly realized that the 6 million foreign debts owed by Robert might not be a big problem. The big problem was that his 3 children did not seem to be his own. The book clearly recorded that the descendants of the Baratheon family and other families were all black-haired, while Joffrey's 3 siblings were all blonde. Eddard rubbed his brows. This matter was a bit difficult to handle. Robert was out hunting at this time. If Robert knew about this, he would definitely execute Joffrey's 3 siblings. The children were innocent. But if he didn't say it, he would be sorry for his good brother Robert. After a while, Eddard decided to take a compromise approach. He decided to go to Cersei first and let Cersei take the 3 children back to the Westerly, and then Robert would decide whether to launch a war against the Westerly. It must be said that Eddard was a little too upright. If it was someone who knew a little about politics, he would choose to take the initiative before Cersei could react. But Eddard naively chose to tell Cersei first and let Cersei run away quickly. I went to Getting Forth today. My cough was too severe and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stand it and had to get forth for more than 2 hours. Chapter 31 The Life of a Slave. The next day, Daenerys brought Jorah and Barristan to Pride Square. At this time, there were many small patrons in Pride Square introducing their slaves to guests, not only unsullied, but also gladiators, bed slaves, skill slaves and other slaves. Among them, bed slaves made Daenerys feel uncomfortable because the several female bed slaves in front of her were naked like livestock, allowing guests to check the condition of the car. Daenerys quickly found the target person for today, the great patron Kraznys. Kraznys wore a yellow silk woven robe and sat on the chair calmly, constantly admiring his new batch of Unsullied. Since Jack acquired a batch of Unsullied, they quickly replenished the spot, and they were all very young Unsullied. Even if they were sold for a few more years, it didn't matter. Soon a servant came up and whispered in his ear, and then he nodded. The servant left quickly and soon brought Daenerys over, and both sides were looking at each other. Tell her that my name is Kraznys, and I'm one of the biggest good masters here. There are now 9,000 Unsullied in the market in Astapor. Ask her if she really wants to buy them all. 30 gold dragons each. Kraznys said to the little black girl beside him. This little black girl is one of the classic characters in Game of Thrones, Missandei, Daenerys' right-hand man. It's a pity that Cersei ordered the Mountain to chop off her head in the end. Otherwise, Daenerys might not have massacred the city, nor would she have been assassinated by Jon Snow, the idiot. Missandei translated the words of the good master to Daenerys, but Daenerys was not in a hurry to buy it. Instead, she said that she wanted to take a look to see if this Unsullied was a truly top infantryman. After Missandei translated these words to the good master Kraznys, he said disdainfully, "This white-haired bitch can't afford it, and she thinks she is a Targaryen princess." Dany glanced at the good master and pretended not to understand Valyrian. Daenerys spoke in the common language, so Kraznys naturally thought that Dany could not understand him, so he spoke quite impolitely. But Missandei would definitely not translate it that way. She had an inexplicable liking for this silver-haired girl. Master Kraznys said that there are 9,000 Unsullied in Astapor. Even if it is 20 gold coins per piece, you can't afford it. Please think about it carefully. Missandei tactfully conveyed Kraznys' words. I haven't decided to buy it yet. What if these Unsullied are just the garbage you boasted about? Then I will be cheated for nothing. Daenerys' tone was mocking. Seeing Daenerys' mocking look, Kraznys frowned and looked at Missandei. Missandei hurriedly translated. She said she wanted to know the true situation of the Unsullied to prevent herself from being cheated. Ha, ignorant Westeros bitch. Kraznys insulted Dany and came to a small group of Unsullied. Then Kraznys began to describe the training process of the Unsullied, and Missandei followed the translation without error. The more Dany listened, the angrier she became. She had never thought that there would be such a cruel training method in the world. 9,000 Unsullied had to fight from at least 36,000 children. Then Krasnez casually cut off a piece of meat from the chest of the Unsullied, and the Unsullied did not even blink. Krasnez nodded in satisfaction, and then said to Daenerys, "The Unsullied know no fear, will not retreat, and will absolutely obey your orders." Once, 3,000 Unsullied repelled 50,000 Dothraki cavalry. At this time, Dany was no longer in the mood to brag to Krasnez about the Unsullied's achievements. The contemptuous attitude of the good lords towards life made her extremely angry. However, Dany suppressed her anger temporarily. "I bought them all." Missandei looked at Dany and then translated, "Master, she said she bought them all." Krasnez said with a mocking look on his face, "This bitch doesn't think that I will sell her the Unsullied just because she flirts with me, right?" Krasnez received the news when Daenerys Targaryen just arrived in Astapor, and also sent people to find out Daenerys' assets. Even if the ship was sold, plus those Dothraki, only 123 Unsullied could be bought. They were all parents of dragons, so Krasnez could only say that Daenerys was really too bad. Master Krasnez asked, "If you have enough money to buy all the Unsullied, a total of 9,000. Not only 9,000 Unsullied, I also want to buy all the reserve Unsullied." Missandei frowned. She had never met a customer who wanted to buy reserve Unsullied, but she still translated it to Krasnez truthfully. Krasnez shook his head and turned away. In his opinion, Daenerys was wasting his precious time. Tell her to decide how much to buy tomorrow. If she wastes my time like this again, I will drive her out of Astapor. Damn bitch. Missandei immediately translated to Dany, "The master said to let you think about it for a day, and you must consider it, based on your own financial strength." Daenerys didn't say anything after hearing this, but just looked at Missandei, and then looked at Krasnez's back, with a flash of disdain in her eyes. At this time, she was sure that Jack's method was basically feasible. Since Jack was unwilling to be an enemy of the Slavers Bay and even the entire SS for the freedom of the slaves, then let her do this. Although according to the original destiny, Daenerys would still take this path, but now with Jack's deception, she undoubtedly made her more determined. Chapter 32, Astana Wave Chaos begins. The next day at noon, Daenerys found Krasnez again, and said that she really wanted to buy all the Unsullied. This time, not only Krasnez, but also Graston and other great philanthropists and archons were there. So she still wants to buy all the Unsullied? This damn bitch doesn't really think this is fun, does she? Krasnez had lost his patience, and said to Graston, "This little bitch may think that she can get our Unsullied with her buttocks." Graston also shook his head. He really thought that someone could pay to buy all the Unsullied. "I have a dragon. I'll give you one in exchange for the Unsullied." Daenerys showed a confident smile on her face. Missandei couldn't help but widen her eyes. "You know, the value of a dragon is better than thousands of troops." After hearing Missandei's translation, Krasnez also looked at Daenerys in shock. He didn't expect that Daenerys would be willing to exchange dragons for the Unsullied. However, Krasnez still said greedily, 3, 1. Daenerys' voice was unquestionable. 2, 1. Krasnez glanced at Daenerys angrily. "Damn Westeros bitch, I want the biggest one." "Deal. I also want this translator." Daenerys agreed to Krasnez's request, using the largest young dragon in exchange, and asked for Missandei at the same time. But this made Jorah and Barristan anxious. "Your Majesty, one dragon is worth thousands of troops. We..." "Shut up, I've made up my mind." Daenerys interrupted them directly. Daenerys did not tell Jorah and Barristan about Jack's plan of getting something for nothing. In the end, Daenerys and Krasnez agreed to hand over the person and the dragon in the square outside the South City tomorrow afternoon. On the way back, Daenerys suddenly turned to Jorah and Barristan and said, "If you question me in front of outsiders again, then you can find another queen." After that, Daenerys turned around and left, leaving Jorah and Barristan looking at each other. After a moment, Barristan said, "Her Majesty has grown up and has become a queen." "Yes, except when facing that black fly," Jorah said in an inexplicable tone. "It seems that you are very resistant to the Blackfire rebels. Or do you simply hate Jack Poseidon because Daenerys has some feelings for him? Anyway, Jorah, I hope you can understand that the Queen's thoughts are not something we can control. We just need to offer our loyalty. In addition, now that the Targaryen dynasty has been destroyed, Blackfyre is no longer a Blackfyre rebel, but one of the Targaryen bloodlines, and perhaps an ally of Her Majesty, in restoring the country in the future. Barristan's words made Jorah Mormont silent and depressed. He understood that Barristan had said it very tactfully. How could a bald middle-aged uncle like him be more important in Dany's heart than the young and promising Jack? As Barristan said, the Targaryen dynasty has now collapsed. Whether it is a black dragon with a red background or a black dragon with a red background, they all have a common name, the remnants of the Targaryen dynasty. It's just that the red dragon flag is the orthodox remnant, and Jack's Blackfyre bloodline is no secret. Although the Blackfyre's bloodline is cut off on the surface, there are still many female Blackfyres who survived at that time, and there are still a few Blackfyres in Essos. But even so, Jorah still believes that he loves Dany deeply. After reorganizing his mood, Jorah chases after Dany's back. Barristan watched this scene without saying a word, but just thought in his heart how to make Daenerys give up the plan to replace the Unsullied with dragons, but it is probably impossible. Dany is very determined. Time soon came to the afternoon of the next day. At this time, Kraznys had been waiting for a long time in the square outside the south wall of Astapor. He received all the Unsullied of Astapor, a total of 9,100 people, under his own hands, stroking the command whip in his hand, and he was looking forward to Daenerys' biggest dragon. Soon Daenerys and her men arrived at the agreed location. 4 Dothraki carried a rectangular wooden cage, and walked to the center. Daenerys glanced at the slave owners who were watching, and then looked at the phalanx of 9,000 Unsullied behind her. Taking a deep breath, Daenerys opened the cage, and then the irritable Drogon crawled out, with one foot wrapped in a chain. Drogon was inexplicably irritated, and he didn't know why his mother put annoying shackles on him. Flying into the air with wings, Daenerys dragged Drogon floating in the air to Kraznys. Kraznys looked at the black dragonfly above his head with a fanatical look. Even though it was still a dragonfly, its ferocious appearance was still domineering. He had seen Jack's dragonfly before, and it looked very evil, which was far different from his own. Thinking of this, Kraznys and Daenerys exchanged the chains and command whips in their hands. Looking at the golden whip in her hand, Daenerys stepped forward and raised the whip in her hand, unsullied. All the Unsullied immediately put their shields on their chests and responded to Daenerys' call. This scene attracted the attention of many people. Forward. After the Unsullied army marched forward a few steps in an orderly manner, Daenerys ordered them to stop. At this time, she was sure that the Unsullied had begun to obey her orders. At this time, Kraznys could no longer catch the irritable Drogon. Tell this damn bitch that his beast is disobedient. But what no one expected was that Daenerys turned around and said in Valyrian, "Real dragons are not beasts, real dragons are real dragons." Kraznys was confused and angry. "You can speak Valyrian? I'm Daenerys Targaryen Stormborn, with the ancient blood of ancient Valyria flowing in my body, and Valyrian is my mother tongue." After saying that, Daenerys looked at the Unsullied again, and then ordered, "Unsullied, kill the good master, kill the soldiers, kill everyone with a whip, but don't hurt the children, and cut off the chains of every slave." Kraznys looked at Daenerys in shock, and couldn't believe that Daenerys actually wanted to rob the thieves directly. At this time, an Unsullied directly took action, and killed a slave owner who didn't react, which directly caused chaos. "I'm your master, kill her, kill her." Kraznys hadn't let go of the chain in his hand at this time. Jorah and Barristan saw this, and quickly drew their swords, and entered combat mode. The whole square was not only filled with Unsullied sold to Daenerys, but also a few Unsullied and Astapor soldiers serving the slave owners. The whole square was in chaos. Daenerys turned around with a confident look on her face and whispered, "Dragon Flame." Chapter 33. I didn't spend any money. After receiving Daenerys' order, Drogon, who had been suppressed for a long time, spewed out dragon flames containing anger. With a wingspan of nearly 2 meters, the power of Drogon's dragon flames was already enough to cause obvious damage. Kraznys screamed miserably and was silent in just a few seconds. Without restrictions, Drogon began to attack the slave owners in the stands, and there were wailing sounds everywhere. At the same time, Jack, who was also stationed outside the city, was explaining the goal of this operation to the 2,000 Unsullied who had assembled. You have been struggling to death here as slaves since childhood. Only 1 out of every 4 people can survive. You killed babies and dogs with your own hands. You are numb and desperate. I know that you definitely have hatred in your hearts. And now, the opportunity for revenge is right in front of you. Kill those slave owners and smash the void cages that imprison you. Astapa makes you kneel down, and Atlantis makes you stand up and become a person. With the dull roar of Karakshu, Jack led 2,000 Unsullied and rushed directly into the city of Astapa. Of course, Jack's goal was not to help Daenerys kill the good master and slave owner, but the pyramid in the city of Astapa. Jack himself led 1,800 people to free slaves along the way. These freed slaves were incorporated into the team by Jack and became excellent porters. And Jeb brought 200 Unsullied to an arena, which was the arena of Daedalus. At this time, Daedalus was squirming on a bed slave. It seemed that he had gone through the back door. The bed slave had some discomfort on his face. Daedalus, who was immersed in the back garden, did not notice the turmoil in Astapa until the door of the room was kicked open. Jeb walked in with 10 Unsullied. Daedalus looked at Jeb in a daze and did not react to what happened for a while. "What are you going to do?" Daedalus asked in a daze. He naturally did not think that Jeb was here for revenge, because this is Astapa, the world of slave owners. Jeb's eyes were red at this time, and his whole body was trembling. He stepped forward and grabbed Daedalus' throat, and his voice was extremely angry. "When we were both slaves, how many beatings did I take for you? How many dirty and tiring jobs did I do for you? But you still betrayed me and Martha." At this time, Daedalus had realized that something was wrong. At this time, no gladiator came to the arena, and no servants under his command came. Something was wrong. My grandfather was a slave, my father was a slave, and I'm also a slave. I have never seen the free starry sky. Only she is my only starlight watching over my long journey. Since she left, there is only the abyss of revenge ahead. I have waited for this day for too long. 12 years. Jez's eyes were bloodshot, full of madness. It hurt too much. He could avenge Martha soon, but why was he so sad in his heart? He let go of the suffocating Daedalus, took a few steps back, and then asked his men to take Daedalus outside. At this time, the arena was surrounded by 200 Unsullied. With Jez's order, 17 Unsullied stepped forward and set up their bows and arrows. 17 bows and arrows. I remember them very clearly. I will never forget them. Daedalus looked at the 17 bows and arrows aimed at him, knowing that he would die today. So Daedalus laughed out loud. Ha ha ha, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I have enjoyed my life for so many years, and you have been humiliated by me for so many years. Your Martha will never be resurrected. She will bear the title of female hedgehog for the rest of her life. Ha 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 ha. Facing Daedalus' words, Go did not break down his defense, but said lightly, "Your wife and son in Meereen, and your little daughter, they will make excellent bed slaves." Daedalus' face changed drastically. "Beast, you can't do anything to my family. You are a beast. Do you think you can get out alive? The armies of the great lords must have surrounded this place. Beast, dare to touch my son, you will not die well." At this time Daedalus finally panicked. His son was his life. From a slave to a small slave owner, he also expected his family to continue from generation to generation and become the real great lord and noble of Astapa. Seeing the panic and anger on Daedalus' face, Go showed a satisfied smile. "Kill him." Looking at Daedalus, who was pierced by arrows, Jess seemed to see the flattering smile he had in front of the slave owner 12 years ago. He took a deep breath and then went to find Martha's father. He wanted to ask him why he could kill his own daughter. However, Jed didn't know that Martha's old father was already dead at this time and died under Drogon's dragon flame. Martha's father was the first wave of spectators burned to death by dragon flame. On the other side, Jack had brought people to the largest pyramid in Astapa, which was Krasni's pyramid. It was said that the gold coins here could fill the entire slave bay. At this time, Astapa was already very chaotic. Krasna's family members immediately organized the guards inside the pyramid and prepared to fight to the death. Seeing this, Jack directly asked Caraxio to easily break the defense of the pyramid with dragon flames under the cover of the Unsullied shield formation. After tearing the gap, the Unsullied rushed in and killed the nobles when they saw them, and Jack did not stop them. His purpose was to plunder, not to occupy. With the continuous slaughter, the whole pyramid exuded a strong smell of blood, and the slaves liberated by Jack along the way acted as coolies. Under the supervision of the Unsullied, they began to move the gold and silver from the warehouse at the bottom of the pyramid out. The carriages that had been prepared long ago were full, and some people secretly stole some gold and silver. Jack did not stop them. These people took a drop in the bucket, which made them feel that they were getting a bargain, and could effectively prevent chaos. As long as they did not loot, the Unsullied who created chaos would be killed directly. Looking at the carts of gold and silver treasures, Jack showed an irrepressible smile on his face. The benevolent masters of Astapa are essentially the same as the dukes and nobles of Westeros, and they are all passed down from generation to generation. This naturally means that their wealth has been accumulated over the generations. If the wealth in the Krasnys pyramid is converted into gold dragons, there are about 1.9 million gold dragons. According to Jack's speculation, the savings of the entire Astapa for hundreds of years are about 15 million gold dragons. This time Jack wants to eat all at once. At this time, 13 giant ships and more than 100 medium and large merchant ships appeared at the Astapa dock. On the Black Pearl, Newgate looked at Astapa with black smoke, and a look of joy flashed in his eyes. For a slave, what could make him happier than seeing the city of Slave Bay destroyed? What's the feeling? Newgate asked Cato beside him. Cato shook his head slightly. I don't have any special feelings. I just feel lucky. Lucky? Newgate looked at Cato in surprise. Yes, it was bought by His Majesty in advance. Cato glanced at Newgate, then turned around to give the order to assemble. Newgate couldn't help but smile, and said to himself, I'm the luckiest one, but I didn't spend any money. Chapter 34, Do It With Ease. Atlantis surrounded the entire dock. As the largest dock in Astapa, it was spacious enough to facilitate the transportation of goods. This time, Newgate brought a total of 500 Unsullied, and 1,000 sailors, plus the people in Jack's hands, enough manpower to transport the goods. Cato led 500 Unsullied to quickly control the entire dock. Many merchants and slave owners who were ready to run away were all detained, and their family property was naturally confiscated. Just when Newgate controlled the dock and prepared to meet Jack, Jack had already arrived at the 5th pyramid. After many plunders, Jack found that the wealth gap between the good masters was also very huge. So far, no good master has been able to catch up with half of Krasnys' wealth. At this time, Daenerys had led her 9,000 Unsullied to liberate slaves along the way. Her goal is also the wealth of the good masters, but Dany currently needs food and grass more, and gold and silver are second. At this time, Jack had already confiscated nearly 4 million gold royals worth of rare treasures. Looking at the fully loaded carriage, Jack was ready to stop. He had already swept through the largest pyramids of the benefactors. The remaining pyramids would be left to Daenerys to search slowly, since they could no longer hold any more. Soon, Daenerys met Jack. Looking at the wealth that filled the wagon, Daenerys did not envy him, but asked Jack about his next plan. Where are you going to develop next? Become a pirate? Or establish a powerful and unparalleled mercenary group? Daenerys looked at Jack with burning eyes. Establish a maritime power, Atlantis, and you can call me the Sea King in the future. Jack did not hide his ultimate goal. Now he has established a firm foothold, and no longer has to worry about being surrounded and suppressed. Daenerys was silent for a moment, and asked tentatively, I wonder if you are willing to join my royal council. I can give you the positions of the King's Hand and the Commander of the Navy, and you don't need to contribute manpower, just give me some advice at critical moments. Dany's words made Jack instantly think of a position. Isn't this just an honorary advisor? Usually, he doesn't do anything, but provides some guidance in some key areas, and then gets paid a lot. Jack touched his chin, and didn't refuse Daenerys immediately. What can you give me in return? If I join your royal council, Atlantis will be the enemy of the entire Slave Bay. This Dany was speechless for a moment, because she had never considered what Jack said. Next, she would face the hostility of the entire Slave Bay. If Jack joined her royal council, he would most likely be listed as an enemy. If you can gain a foothold in Slave Bay, I might consider helping you, but definitely not now. It depends on whether your situation is worth my investment. Hearing Jack's words, Daenerys temporarily gave up the idea of winning him over. Jack was right. If he had no investment value, Jack would not risk standing on the side at all. After the two teams avoided each other, Jack successfully arrived at the dock with a large amount of spoils. Newgate had been waiting for a long time. The moment he saw Jack, he hurried over and said, "Your Majesty, are you okay? Just call me Captain. You are an old man. There is no need to be so reserved," Jack said with a smile. Newgate quickly corrected him, "Your Majesty, you are now a big man with 8,000 soldiers and hundreds of ships. It is not appropriate to call you Captain." Ha ha ha, then it's up to you. Jack really likes the feeling of being flattered. Since someone is willing to flatter him, he is naturally very happy to cooperate. How is the construction of the Seychelles now? He has not left Astapa in the past few months, and does not know what the Seychelles are like. It's a treasure land. In addition to the giant island in the middle of the Seychelles, there are 5 small islands surrounding it. You can build a city on the central island and a town on the periphery. Speaking of the Seychelles, Newgate was 100% satisfied. He thought the environment on the island would be relatively harsh, but he did not expect the soil to be fertile and the climate to have basically no disadvantages except for the rain. Jack had all the looted items moved onto the ship, and then he led his large army to the Seychelles. In the cabin, Newgate, Cato, and Jack were eating. "Your Majesty, the entire Seychelles is very large, roughly estimated to be about 20,000 square kilometers. Our people have only built a camp in the north of the island, and have not yet explored it in depth." Jack poured himself a glass of wine and then asked, "How many species are there on the island?" "If there are many species, it means that the Seychelles is still a very good island. There are quite a lot of species. In addition, there are no humans on the island, but there are a large number of blackleaf monkeys, which are very annoying. If the blackleaf monkeys are not eliminated, I'm afraid nothing can be planted." The blackleaf monkey was named by Newgate. It is a kind of monkey with a charred body, curly hair, and a leaf-like green mark on its forehead. The number of blackleaf monkeys is amazing, and they even form groups to sneak attack the Unsullied patrol team from time to time. Although there is no threat, it is very uncomfortable to be thrown with rotten fruit peels and feathers. Then Newgate told Jack about the situation of the blackleaf monkeys in detail. Jack waved his hand, indicating that Newgate did not need to worry too much. No matter where humans go, they are absolutely invasive species. After Jack transfers a large number of people to the island, the blackleaf monkeys on the island will slowly become extinct because their habitats are cut down. There is no need to hunt blackleaf monkeys specifically. "Your Majesty, where are you going to migrate these people from?" "There are not many places to migrate people at present. The best place is Slave Bay, but there are no slaves in Slave Bay now. Of course, from Slave Bay, especially the Laza people, who are gentle and good at planting. They are the best large base population," Jack said without hesitation. "But Slave Bay has now been liberated by Daenerys Targaryen. How can we still buy slaves?" Cato was a little puzzled. Cato didn't know much about this. He was proficient in commanding the Unsullied, but he was only proficient in commanding the Unsullied to fight. Daenerys said she was going to liberate the Slave Bay, but it's still a long way to go. There are 3 cities in the Slave Bay, and now only Astapa has been liberated, but Meereen and Yunke have not. She doesn't have enough management talents, and she can't rule the Slave Bay stably. The slavery system in the Slave Bay for hundreds of years is not so easy to get rid of, not to mention that the entire Essos continent is accustomed to the slavery system. Isn't the prosperity of the 9 major trading cities built on the bones of slaves? As soon as the voice fell, Newgate suddenly stood up, and then knelt down in front of Jack. "Your Majesty, I beg you, if you have the strength, please help us slaves." What Jack didn't expect was that Cato also knelt down, and the meaning was self-evident. Seeing this, Jack was very pleased. This is good. Having your own ideas and pursuits is a complete person. Jack is not afraid that his subordinates have too many thoughts, but he is afraid that they are numb and boring like dead fish. Get up, you are no longer slaves. As for slavery, you don't have to worry too much. It's just a small slavery. Just swing Daenerys' sword a little bit. Newgate looked up at Jack, who was pouring wine for him. The confidence and dominance in his eyes shook his heart. For a moment, Newgate felt that Jack was really the omnipotent sea god. Dong dong dong. Newgate kowtowed 3 times in a row. Your Majesty, I thank you on behalf of all the slaves in Essos. Newgate, an old man, has been a slave all his life, and his hatred for slavery is self-evident. For Jack, destroying slavery does not require much effort, or doing it himself. He only needs to give Daenerys some advice and let Daenerys work hard, and he can even get a lot of benefits from it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Seychelles Islands Construction Plan. It takes about a month to travel from Slave Bay to the Seychelles. If fully loaded, it will take 2 to 3 months, depending on the wind direction and the amount of cargo. Your Majesty, the Seychelles Central Island is ahead. We will first pass some small islands with an area of only a few hundred square meters. These small islands are densely packed, but they are useless, but we can set up some sentinels for vigilance. Jack nodded. He had seen all of this before. After all, the nautical chart was drawn by him and Poseidon. Jack suddenly made a puzzled sound. Newgate turned his head and followed Jack's gaze. He saw a strange giant beast about 4 meters long resting on the coast of a small island. It was Poseidon. Your Majesty, don't worry. Although this sea lizard is ridiculously large, it has a gentle personality and will not attack humans. It has even saved some Unsullied who can't swim. It is like the guardian of the sea. Newgate hurriedly introduced it, and at the same time, stated that this sea lizard had saved the Unsullied. He was worried that Jack would order the hunting of this giant sea lizard. Newgate believed that this giant sea lizard was the incarnation of Poseidon, and was the patron saint sent by Poseidon to protect Atlantis. Jack nodded expressionlessly, thinking, do I need you to introduce this thing? It's just that he was a little surprised to see Poseidon sunbathing on the beach just now. After all, Poseidon never sunbathes before, but prefers to wander in the deep sea. Seeing that Jack seemed to be uninterested in Poseidon, Newgate continued, Your Majesty, do you think it looks like our Atlantis flag? I think this is a good thing, which means that the god of the sea is watching us. Atlantis. Your name as the king of the sea is well deserved. We can publicize this matter and let your reputation be attached to myths and legends, which will also facilitate your rule. Jack smiled in his heart. That's right. How can it not look like it? I just drew it according to its appearance when it was a child. However, Jack did not point out the true identity of Poseidon. In the future, Godzilla's size will reach 200 meters, which is different from the 200 meters of the dragon. Dragons have wings, necks, and tails, but Godzilla is simply 200 meters tall. The visual impact is different, so Jack plans to make Godzilla the incarnation of the god of the ocean. 30 million years ago, the god of the ocean, Godzilla, fought against the god of darkness, Ghidorah, to save the world, and then added some strange earth gods, and was able to edit a cultural system by himself. Thinking of this, Jack couldn't help laughing, and then threw away the messy pictures in his mind. Soon, the mighty fleet arrived at the dock of the central island of Seychelles. The dock is still under construction, but we don't have so many professional craftsmen, so we can only barely build a model for temporary use. Newgate explained. It's okay, it doesn't matter. Next, I will take time to go to Marine and bring back some technical slaves. Jack signaled Newgate not to worry. I can go for such a small matter. You don't have to do everything yourself. Newgate said quickly. In his opinion, some small things don't need Jack to do them personally, otherwise it will make him look very embarrassed, as if he is idle and useless. Jack patted Newgate on the shoulder and said, I can't stay in the Seychelles Islands forever, nor can I stay on the Sea King forever. You will have a lot of tasks in the future, so I will do some things I can. In fact, there is another sentence Jack didn't say, that is, Newgate's ability has been slowly unable to keep up with the pace of Atlantis development. After all, Newgate was a slave before, which is an unchangeable fact. His knowledge and experience are limited. Before, they could help Jack, because there were not many people, and Newgate, who was old and experienced, could handle it. But with the increase in the number of people and the construction of the central island, Newgate must be getting more and more powerless. So next Jack plans to divide the position of the king's hand into two, the king's left hand and the king's right hand. This will not only share the power of the prime minister, but also allow Newgate to have something to do, but not too tired and ashamed. After all, Newgate was one of the first batch of old people who followed him, and he helped him a lot. Kick him out, and it would be disheartening for his subordinates. Jack planned to follow the model of the Seven Kingdoms for the future political system of Atlantis. In the future, the territories of the nobles would be islands and overseas bases. As for what Atlantis would develop into in the end, that was not what Jack needed to consider now. However, Jack was not going to delegate all the military and political power to the nobles under his command. Instead, he was going to give them only political power, but not military power. If he gave them military power, it would inevitably cause some problems. After boarding the dock, Jack first visited the camp built by Newgate, and touched his head. Isn't this just a temporary camp? Jack thought there was already a cone of a village here, but he didn't expect it to be a temporary camp. He sighed secretly. His requirements were a bit high. After all, it was only a few months, and it was really difficult for them to let this group of people do infrastructure construction. Newgate, let's build some warehouses first, put the wealth we have harvested in them, and then cut down the forests with all our strength, so that everyone can live in their own stone and wood houses. Newgate touched his beard and said, I have arranged for people to cut down trees and collect wood. Jack shook his head and emphasized, I mean everyone. Anyway, no one will attack here. Let everyone collect stone and wood, and then send people to the free trade city to purchase food and various slave craftsmen. As for Jack himself, he was going to meet Ween in person. There were a considerable number of skilled slaves there, including carpenters, stonemasons, blacksmiths, etc. Although there might not be many people with truly superb skills, there were many of them. 3 cobblers can kill Zhuge Liang. Hissing, a dull dragon roar sounded, and Karakshu was seen dragging a black primate creature that was more than 1 meter long to fly over. Seeing this, Newgate said to Jack, this is the black leaf monkey we encountered. It is pitch black, has a violent personality, and is not small in size. Karakshu landed slowly, and then dragged the black leaf monkey to Jack's feet with excitement, motioning Jack to try it quickly. It was really delicious. Jack narrowed his eyes slightly. He was not very interested in primates, but he still asked someone to drag the monkey down to deal with it, and taste it simply. Do you think this thing is delicious? Jack looked at Karakshu. Karakshu tilted his head, and did not speak, but the meaning was self-evident. It thought it was really delicious. If it could speak, it would definitely tell Jack, the meat of the black leaf monkey is delicious, and must be tasted. Patting Karakshu's head, Jack said, then I will give you all the black leaf monkeys on the entire island. Eat as much as you want. Hissing, Karakshu neighed softly, then got up, and flew to the distant forest. The Seychelles Islands are flat and densely jungled, with a freshwater river running through the entire central island. Next, Jack plans to build a city along the river, called Neptune City. Chapter 36. Don't tell Korak to stop. Although the Seychelles Islands were the place Jack chose, he had not known about them in detail before, so he spent the next week exploring the Seychelles Islands. After a week of exploration, Jack finally felt relieved. There were no large beasts in the Seychelles Islands. The most threatening creatures were the black leaf monkeys in the forests on the island, but this was not a problem. And to the west of the Seychelles Islands is the Basilisk Islands, and Jack plans to turn the Basilisk Islands into the territory of Atlantis in the future. However, the Basilisk Islands are different from the Seychelles Islands. As the name suggests, the area of the Basilisk Islands is several times larger than that of the Seychelles Islands, but the basilisks on the island are ugly, ferocious, and huge reptiles. It is said that the largest basilisk is twice the size of a lion, which means it must be at least 5 or 6 meters long. However, basilisks are also one of the commodities of Essos, and many hunters will venture to Yeti or the Basilisk Islands to catch basilisks. Basilisks are commonly used in gladiatorial fights in Essos for people's entertainment, such as fighting with slaves, dogs and other creatures. Hiss, Karakshu fell from the sky. Jack frowned and looked at Karakshu. Karakshu was originally a slender dragon, but after just 1 week, he had gained weight. Don't call me Karakshu anymore. Call me Labra Pig. This name suits you very well. Jack complained speechlessly. His Karakshu cried proudly. It felt that it gained weight due to its superb hunting skills, and was proud of it. For Karakshu, this period of time was like heaven. The dense blackleaf monkeys allowed Karakshu to catch them with his eyes closed. And not only blackleaf monkeys, but also many other animals. The wooden door was pushed open with a creak, and an unsullied pushed the door and walked in, followed by a little ewe, Evelyn. Evelyn had grown a lot at this time. She had changed from a cute sheep girl to a delicious sheep girl. No, she had changed to a cute and naive sheep girl. Evelyn trotted to Karakhu's side, butted Karakhu's head with her head, and then hid under Jack's crotch amid Karakhu's angry roar. Me. Evelyn looked at Karakhu with a smug look on her face. So what if you have horns? You can still let me provoke you. Oh, fuck, Evelyn, I say it again. You are not allowed to provoke Karakhu. Otherwise if he eats you, when I'm not around, I won't be able to do anything about it. Unfortunately, Evelyn was just a little goat after all, and couldn't understand Jack's complicated warnings, but fortunately she saw Jack's warning tone, and restrained her smug look a little. Then Jack told Karakshu, poor Karakshu, you are a noble dragon. You are smart, upright, brave and kind. Evelyn is our family. Although she is stupid and arrogant, you must not eat her for any reason. Do you understand? Karakshu put away his fangs with an unhappy look on his face. Seeing this, Jack nodded with satisfaction. Dragons are still very smart. Although they are still not as smart as normal people, they are much smarter than other animals. When Evelyn saw Karakshu put away his fangs, she wagged her little tail and came to Karakshu, then rubbed Karakshu's neck with her head, looking flattering. Karakshu turned his head away with a look of disgust. He didn't want to pay attention to this stupid ewe at all. Ignoring the two non-humans who were fighting every day, Jack ordered the Unsullied, go find Newgate and ask him to see me. Yes. Soon Newgate came to Jack, and after saluting respectfully, Newgate asked, Your Majesty, do you have anything to talk to me about? I'm going to leave for Slave Bay. You continue to arrange people to go to the free trade city states to purchase food, iron ore and other supplies. When the time is right, I will send you a message, and then you can take the ship to Slave Bay to transfer the population. Hearing this, Newgate frowned slightly, and then asked, Your Majesty, in this case, do we still need to buy slaves when purchasing food and iron? There are also many slave traders in the 9 major trade city states. Jack waved his hand. No need to buy, that costs money. If Slave Bay is operated properly, we can get a large number of people and craftsmen without spending money. Newgate nodded. In that case, then I will buy food and iron. Is there anything else you need to buy? Let's buy food and iron first. This is the most important thing. In addition, we need to buy good food seeds. At least we need to make the Seychelles self-sufficient first. There is no farmland in the Seychelles yet. All the food is bought from outside by the fleet, so Jack has to prepare for the land reclamation. He handed a piece of burlap paper to Newgate and said, This is the method of making soil and fertilizer that I sorted out. You can ask someone to try to make it. It doesn't matter if it fails, but you must keep trying. Newgate carefully accepted the method of making soil and fertilizer. I understand, Your Majesty, you can rest assured. 3 days later, after Jack arranged the follow-up basic work, he set sail again on the Poseidon. Jack did not bring many people to Slave Bay this time. He only brought 300 Unsullied, and even Karaku was not brought. The ecological environment of the Seychelles is very suitable for Karaku's growth. Karaku's growth rate on the island is much faster than running around with Jack. After the transformation, the Poseidon has a wide space and a fast speed, which is very suitable for travel. And there was Poseidon as a tracker under the ship, so according to Jack's calculations, as long as Poseidon gritted his teeth, he could reach Slave Bay in about 18 days. Soon half a month passed, and on this morning, Jack moved his body on the deck and jumped into the sea. After entering the sea, Poseidon came over from the bottom of the sea. Jack grabbed Poseidon's dorsal fin and then dived rapidly under the leadership of Poseidon. Because of the transplantation of the heart of the ocean, Jack could see things within a certain range even underwater, and soon Jack was taken to his destination by Poseidon. Jack looked at the shipwreck in front of him with glowing eyes. There are many shipwrecks in the waters near Slave Bay. These shipwrecks are lost treasures that are out of reach for ordinary people, but very friendly to Jack. This is also something Jack has only thought of recently. Sure enough, under Poseidon's search, he really found a shipwreck today. Touching Poseidon's big head to show encouragement, Jack held a water fork and swam quickly to the shipwreck. Poseidon followed closely behind, always protecting Jack's safety. Chapter 37, Valyrian Armor. The ship looked like a large merchant ship, with only half of the hull exposed outside, and the rest was buried in the mud. Jack circled around the exposed hull, and winked at Poseidon. Poseidon immediately understood, opened his mouth wide, and pierced the hull with an atomic breath. Looking at the hole in the hull, Jack enlarged the hull with force, and then slid in with his size advantage. As soon as he entered the cabin, Jack saw several corpses. Exploring along the hull, Jack had no harvest. There were things that broke at the touch everywhere, not even some porcelain and gems. But Jack was not discouraged. Although there was nothing on this ship, the most likely reason was that it had been too long, and there must be shipwrecks in recent years on the seabed. Thinking of this, Jack was about to leave. At this moment, Jack's eyes condensed, and he found an unusual skeleton. All the boxes Jack had encountered before were broken at the touch, and no one touched them, but the skeleton in front of him had a large wooden box in his arms, and the ankle of this skeleton was entangled by a chain. It is not difficult to imagine that this skeleton wanted to take the box away when the ship sank, but it was accidentally entangled by the chain around its ankle and eventually drowned in the sea. He went forward and smashed the corroded skeleton and wooden box, and a suit of armor emerged from the wooden box. Jack was surprised. This turned out to be a set of knight armor. It has not been corroded for so many years. After untying the rope from his waist and tying up the knight armor, Jack dragged the knight armor and swam outside. Just when Jack was about to reach the exit, there was a loud noise outside, followed by the roar of Poseidon. Jack was shocked. Did a creature attack Poseidon? Without time to think about it, Jack temporarily put down the knight armor and immediately came outside. He saw Poseidon fighting with a giant octopus. The tentacles of the octopus are at least 10 meters long, and the overall appearance is about 11 or 12 meters. No wonder there are always legends about sirens on the sea. With this size, it is easy to eat several people in one meal. However, with the heart of the ocean, Jack is at home in the sea, and is even stronger than on land. Jack rushed towards the octopus with a harpoon in hand. At this time, the octopus also discovered Jack's figure. There was no time to think about why the two-legged beast appeared in the deep sea. It directly freed two tentacles to wrap around Jack. However, the clumsy two-legged beast in the sea in memory easily avoided the tentacles. When it reacted, Jack had already stabbed it into its mouth with a harpoon. It's so big, so deep, and so painful. The octopus loosened the tentacles that trapped Poseidon after feeling the pain, and Poseidon took the opportunity to spit out atomic breath to cut the body of the octopus. After seeing that the octopus slowly stopped moving, Jack returned to the hull, took the knight's armor, and swam to the surface of the sea. Poseidon dragged the giant octopus to follow Jack. After a while, Jack emerged from the water and returned to the deck of the Poseidon along the ladder prepared before. As soon as Jack came up, Ellie and Jagger came up to him. Seeing the knight's armor on Jack's back, Ellie's eyes were full of admiration, just like seeing the wolf leader who went out hunting and returned with a full load. Throwing the armor on the deck, Jack immediately called a team of Unsullied and asked them to find a giant hook. Jack tied a rope to one end of the hook and then jumped into the sea again. He hooked the hook into the octopus body. Jack returned to the deck again and asked everyone to work together to pull up the more than 10-meter long octopus. Hundreds of people on the Poseidon gathered on the deck immediately. They looked at the corpse of the octopus in shock. Is this an octopus? It's so big. This must be the legendary sea monster Cai Kun. Lord Poseidon is really the reincarnation of a god. He can actually kill this kind of sea monster underwater. There was a lot of discussion around, but Jack didn't care about it. After flattening the giant octopus, He measured it and found that the body length of this monster was 13.7 meters, which was as long as Jack's previous sea dog. Chef, where's the chef? Drag this octopus down. We'll have a seafood dinner tonight. Woohoo. Everyone cheered. They've been out at sea for half a month, and the food is getting worse day by day. It's hard not to be happy to have a seafood dinner today. Jack also secretly asked Poseidon to speed up and try to reach Slave Bend as soon as possible. Time soon came tonight. The Poseidon was still moving fast, and the crew was singing and dancing on the deck. Jack lay in Ella's arms and enjoyed the grilled octopus with the service of Jagger. Fortunately, the spice trade in the Game of Thrones world is very developed, and the octopus tentacles don't taste much fishy. And to celebrate the killing of the giant octopus, Jack also took out all the remaining wine and water, and everyone got half a cup. As for the knight's armor, Jack had put it away. He was 80% sure that it was a set of knight's armor made of Valyrian steel. Only the legendary Valyrian steel would be soaked in the sea for a long time without being corroded and rusted. But unfortunately, the knight armor didn't fit Jack well. Jack guessed that the owner of the armor should be around 1.75 meters. Jack was more than 1.8 meters tall, and it was a little short when he put it on. Although the impact was not particularly large, it was very awkward and ugly. At the same time, Daenerys, who had stayed in Astapa for several months, set out for Yunque. Unlike the original drama, Daenerys did not decide to attack Yunque after learning that there were 200,000 slaves in Yunque. Under Jack's temptation, Daenerys regarded the liberation of slaves as her responsibility. After leaving behind a leadership class headed by doctors, scholars, and warlocks, Daenerys led an army composed of all the Unsullied and some new free people who were willing to leave with her to the north. Chapter 38, Meereen. 2 days passed in a flash, and Jack parked the Poseidon at the dock of Astapa. Then he brought 100 Unsullied to the city of Astapa. At this time, Astapa was still celebrating the liberation of slaves on the surface, but in fact, the chaos had begun to be uncontrollable. The reason was still on this group of liberated slaves. After hundreds of thousands of slaves were liberated, Daenerys did not arrange a way out for these slaves. Daenerys told the slaves, "You are liberated, you are free." But the same is that this group of free slaves have nothing to do all day, and they have no idea what they are going to do next. In just a few months, they went from excitement to confusion, and even many slaves felt that they had lost the meaning of life and hoped to return to slavery. After Jack entered Astapa with the Unsullied, the first feeling was chaos. A large number of new free people were wandering aimlessly on the streets. Jack looked at these new free people and found that these people were not as energetic as when they were slaves before. The whole person gave him the feeling of a walking corpse. But not all people are like this. There are also many people with ruddy faces and full of vitality. Jack guessed that these people should be slaves with skills. For example, stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, etc. They have skills, so even if they lose the command of slave owners, they can still support themselves. Especially the bed slaves. After the slave owners are gone, the income can fall into their own hands, and their lives are naturally getting better and better. The worst are the ordinary slaves. Without slave owners to work for them, they themselves have no skills. They live on the food left by Daenerys all day long, eating and sleeping, sleeping and eating, so they naturally begin to numb. However, more ordinary slaves still prefer this lazy and free life, and only a few slaves are looking forward to returning to the hands of slave owners. In short, the entire Astapa is now in a state of chaos and disorder, and the production work of the entire city has directly fallen into a semi-stagnant state, especially after most of the good masters were killed by Daenerys. Astapa lost its pillar industry. Jack did not stay in Astapa for too long. After buying supplies in the city, he returned to the Poseidon. The new free people here are ordinary slaves, and are not of much use. On the Poseidon, Jack followed the slave coast all the way north and soon arrived at his destination, Meereen. On the way, Jack also saw the mighty army of the Unsullied on the coastal continent. The coastal continent starts from Astapa, is built along the coast, and continues to Meereen. In Game of Thrones, the slave owners of Meereen nailed 163 slave boys to death on this road. and pointed the hands of these slave boys to the sky to provoke Daenerys, who claimed to be the liberator of slaves, and they succeeded. Dany was furious and then mailed the same number of big slave owners to death. Meereen is located on the northernmost coast of Slavers Bay, near the mouth of the Skazadon River, on a sandy cape. To the east is a series of hills, and behind that is a sandstone mountain range. To reach Lazar, you must pass through the Kaiser Pass. Meereen is built of bricks like her sister city-states Yunkai and Astapor, but the bricks of Meereen are multicolored, not just yellow or red. It has strong defense, high and thick walls, well-maintained defense towers at every corner, and bronze harpy heads on the walls that can spray boiling oil at the enemy. The northern wall runs along the river bank, and the river flows through the city, while the western wall is built along the bay. The city's sewer leads to the Skazadon River. Overall, it is worthy of being the largest, most prosperous and most populous city in Slavers Bay. It is said that the population of Meereen is greater than that of Astapor and Yunkai combined. After docking the Poseidon, Jack brought a team of Unsullied and Vitriol into the most legendary city in Slavers Bay. The pyramids here are really big, Vitriol exclaimed. The largest pyramid in Meereen is called the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is 800 feet high, has 33 floors, and is topped by a bronze harpy statue. Later, after Daenerys occupied this place, she moved her bedroom to the Great Pyramid and replaced the harpy statue on the top with a beacon tower, and at the same time, planted the red dragon flag of the Targaryen family. There are not only the Great Pyramids here, but also the Temple of Grace and a huge arena. We can go and have a look later, Jack said. Anyway, it would take a few months before Daenerys came over, so it wouldn't stop Jack from playing for a while. Really? Victoria's eyes lit up. During the time she followed Jack, she seemed to have forgotten her previous slave experience, just like a naive and active little girl. Rubbing her little head, Jack said, "Of course, can I still deceive a cute little fool? Huh, you're so annoying. I'm not stupid at all. I'm going to the bar today to see the world, and I'll update these first." Chapter 39. High-level slaves. The slave market in Meereen is very large. Jack went straight to the high-level slave market. After arriving at the slave market, there are many types of high-level slaves, such as teachers, physicians, and housekeepers. The domestication period of these high-level slaves is very long, and the price is naturally very expensive. Depending on their abilities, the price is also around dozens of gold. Jack asked several slave owners in succession, and found that the most expensive high-level slaves were physicians, followed by teachers and housekeepers. Even though these people are slaves, their masters generally do not treat them as livestock, but give them certain preferential treatment. Among them, the most expensive physician's price is about the same as that of the Unsullied, about 30 gold dragons, and teachers are cheaper, about 20 gold dragons. As for other types of high-level slaves such as housekeepers, the price generally does not exceed 10 gold dragons. Secondly, Jack also inquired about all the 6-year-old slave children. Children of this age are growing up, they eat a lot, but they can't do much heavy work, so the price is relatively cheap. Only 10 coppers are needed for one. And this price has already risen. The reason is that Daenerys liberated Astapor and now besieged Yunkai, causing the price of slaves in Meereen to soar. The skyrocketing slave prices made the great lords of Meereen give up their plan to support Yunkai immediately, and instead prepared to make a fortune during this period, and then help Yunkai. After all, the three cities are in a competitive relationship. If Daenerys' goal was not to liberate the Slavers Bay, they would not even care about the life and death of Yunkai and Astapor. Just as Jack was trying to figure out the situation in Meereen, outside the city of Yunkai, the wise lords selected representatives to try to negotiate with Daenerys. The one who comes is Lord Razdor Moraz, an ancient and glorious noble, the Lord of Mortals, the barbarian negotiator, representing Yunkai to negotiate peace. Missandei introduced the identity of the Wise Lord and brought the Wise Lord representative to Daenerys. Before the Wise Lord spoke, Drogon and Viserion let out a creepy roar, which frightened the Wise Lord representative and made him take a step back and swallow his saliva. Daenerys smiled, obviously very satisfied with Drogon and Viserion's show of power. Missandei saw that she had finished showing off her power and said, "Before you is Daenerys Stormborn of the House Targaryen. Queen of the Andals and the First Men, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons. Whether in Westeros or Essos, people of the world value bloodline very much. When Missandei introduced them, the representative of the Wise Lords also looked at Daenerys and was surprised that her name was so long. Daenerys smiled and stretched out her hand. You may come forward, please take a seat. The Wise Lord looked at the 3 dragons beside Daenerys, hesitated for a moment, and then slowly walked forward and sat down. Missandei came forward with a cup and asked, "My lord, would you like a drink?" Aerys nodded, and then Missandei poured Daenerys a glass of wine for Aerys. Razdal Mo Aerys took a sip of the wine to calm his nerves. Yunkai is ancient and glorious. Our ancient empire existed long before the dance of Valyria's dragons. Many armies have been defeated before our city. Looking at the nagging Aerys, Daenerys said nothing, but took out a piece of raw meat from the plate beside her and threw it directly into the air. Smelling the food, the 3 dragons beside Dany flew into the air and instantly tore the raw meat into pieces. This scene scared Daenerys so much that he leaned back, frowning as he looked at the 3 young dragons, secretly slandering that the 3 young dragons were as vulgar as Dany. Very good. My Unsullied need practical experience. Someone once said that they should taste blood early. Hearing this, Aerys immediately retorted, "If you want blood, there will be rivers of blood, but why bother? Although you committed barbaric acts in Astapor, we Yunkai people are generous and tolerant. The Wise Lords of Yunkai have brought gifts to the Dragon Queen." Then the representative of the Wise Lords clapped his hands, and 4 slaves came up carrying 2 boxes. At the signal of Aerys, the representative of the Wise Lords, 2 slaves opened the boxes. One box contained glittering gold, which was obviously of good quality. The other box contained crystal clear gems of various colors. "There are more on your ship," Aerys said confidently. Daenerys smiled and asked, "My ships?" "Yes, Dragon Queen," I said. "We are generous. You can have as many ships as you want." "What are the conditions?" "We only ask you to sail away, return to your homeland, and take back the Iron Throne. That should belong to you." Aerys' attitude has been very humble. He gave money and ships, and only asked Daenerys to return to Westeros, and not interfere in their politics. They don't want to, nor do they want to see a war with the Mother of Dragons. They just want to do the slave business quietly. Hearing this, Daenerys looked at the slaves kneeling beside Aerys, and then said to Aerys, "I will also give you a gift." Aerys sat up slightly, showing that he was listening attentively. "Your life." Aerys was a little confused. "My life? And the lives of the wise masters?" Daenerys added, "But I also have a condition. Release all the slaves in Yunkai. Give each man, woman, old and young all the food, clothing and belongings they can carry as a reward for their years of labor. If you refuse this gift, I will show no mercy." "Are you crazy?" Aerys showed an unbelievable look on his face. He didn't expect that Yunkai's sincerity would be exchanged for such a reply from Daenerys. "We are not Astapor or Karth. We are Yunkai. We have powerful friends, and our friends are very happy to destroy you and your army. For those who survive, we will enslave them again, and maybe even you will become our slave." Aerys stood up. At this time, Drogon suddenly roared, and Aerys quickly stepped back and said to Daenerys, "You swore to keep me safe." Daenerys nodded. "I swore, but my dragons didn't, and you threatened their mother." After that, Dany smiled and looked at Drogon. Aerys looked at Dany with shame and anger. He felt that he was fooled. "Take the gold and let's go," he ordered his slaves. Under Drogon's gaze, the 4 slaves stepped forward tremblingly. Before they touched the box containing the gold bars, Drogon roared and pounced on the gold, frightening the slaves to step back quickly. "This is my gold. You gave it to me, remember?" Daenerys looked at Aerys expressionlessly at this moment. "I will use it properly. You should also cherish the gift I gave you," Daenerys said seriously. "Now, get out of here." Aerys cursed and then turned and left. Barristan said at this time, "The Yunkai people are a proud race. They will not surrender." "What is the end of those who do not surrender?" Daenerys asked softly. Jorah and Barristan were silent. They were very pleased with Daenerys' confidence. They said they have powerful friends. Who are their friends? Jorah thought about it for a while, and then said simply, "I don't know." Daenerys rolled her eyes slightly. "Find the answer." Jorah nodded, and then led the people away. At this time, Drogon flew to Dany. Daenerys stroked Drogon's head, her eyes full of confidence. Now she has dragons, an army of unsullied, and a lot of looted property. I didn't update, because I went to the bar yesterday. I can only say that I won't go to the bar a second time. It's not fun at all. Chapter 40 A visit from a Myrinese noble. A week after the failure of the negotiation between the wise lord and Daenerys, Daenerys has surrounded young Cai. Young Cai has also made sufficient preparations, not only with 5,000 slave soldiers, but also with 2,000 mercenaries from the Second Sons. Here we will use the setting of the TV series. The setting of the original book is a bit complicated, and many people have not read it. Facing Daenerys is 9,000 unsullied, plus the dispensable new Freeman army. Relying on the city walls, young Cai is confident that it can withstand Daenerys' attack. After all, Daenerys has no siege equipment, and even if the Unsullied are strong, they cannot appear directly on the city walls. The atmosphere between the two sides is tense, but Daenerys is not in a hurry to attack. She believes that mercenaries fight for gold, and dead people cannot give mercenaries gold. She chose to negotiate with the leader of the Second Sons, Merrow, who is known as the Titan Bastard. However, Barristan does not recommend doing so. Merrow, known as the Titan Bastard, is the leader of the mercenary group Second Sons. He is from Bravos, tall, with light green eyes and a thick red gold beard that reaches his waist. He is notorious, and almost no one dares to hire the notorious Second Sons under his command. In short, this man is dangerous and has no credibility. Even if he surrenders to Daenerys, he is like a time bomb that may explode at any time. However, Daenerys still insists on her choice. If she can incite the Second Sons to revolt, then the next war will be much easier for her. At the same time, Jack, who is in Meereen, is looking at Carracks in front of him angrily. Look at me. I just left, and you are lawless. You are either stealing chickens or dogs all day long. I think you don't want to live. Jack held a letter in his hand, which detailed the sins committed by Carracks after Jack left. Finally, after Newgate and others discussed, they all agreed that Carracks should be sent to Jack, and it should not be allowed to do whatever it wants in the Seychelles, otherwise the camp must be demolished. So the people of Newgate locked up Carracku, and sent him directly to Jack, and wrote a letter listing Carracku's crimes. It was precisely because of this that Jack was so angry now. He didn't expect that Carracku's good boy appearance was all fake. Carracku knew that the matter was exposed, and he showed a pitiful look, as if saying, you know, I left my mother when I was young. Brother, don't be angry. Carracku is still a little dragon after all. It's normal to be naughty. Vitelli went straight into Jack's arms. Jack picked up his slippers directly and said in a dark face, no matter who comes today, it will be useless. It dares to eat the hen that lays eggs today, and it will dare to eat people tomorrow. Hearing this, Vitelli gave Carracku a look of self-pity. She really tried her best. Generally, if it was not a big deal, Jack would go along with her, as long as she acted coquettishly, but today Carracku could not escape this beating. And Carracku also knew that he was in danger today. Looking at Jack who was walking over, Carracku wailed as if the sole of his shoe had hit him. This made Jack even angrier. You're starting to pretend, right? I told you to pretend. I told you to pretend. Suddenly, the shrill howl sounded again, but it was obvious that the howl this time was more sincere and heartfelt, with less false taste. Just as Jack was teaching Carracku a lesson, in the front yard, the Meereen nobles including the Daznak family looked at the direction of the inner yard with some fear. Does the father of dragons usually train dragons like this? Sadari Daznak said tactfully. He originally wanted to say that the father of dragons usually abused dragons like this, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was inappropriate, so he changed his words. The Unsullied looked at the nobles in front of him. He didn't want to speak, but for the sake of his majesty's image, he still explained. Carracks who made a mistake, so the Sea King punished it. The Sea King is kind and generous, and is very kind to us. After hearing the words of the Unsullied, Sadari Daznak cleared his throat. My name is Sadari Daznak. The Daznak family is an ancient slave-owning family in Meereen. Of course, there are other ancient families in Meereen. We want to visit Lord Jack. Go and inform him. Can't you see that we are all waiting here? A group of them had been blocked at the door by the Unsullied for a long time. The reason was naturally that Lord Poseidon was dealing with family affairs. This made the nobles of Meereen feel neglected, especially since it was the Unsullied who stopped them. If it weren't for Jack's face, they would have asked their gladiators to kill these Unsullied. At most, they would pay Jack 3 times the compensation. They are not short of money, but they can't let them feel shameless. There is no doubt that being stopped by the Unsullied in the front yard made them lose face. The captain of the Unsullied team winked at his subordinates, signaling them to keep an eye on the nobles, and then he was going to the backyard to ask Jack for instructions. At this moment, a blood-red figure rushed out, and everyone hurriedly dodged. Then the blood-red figure suddenly jumped and flew to the big tree in the yard. Only then did everyone see the full appearance of the figure, a giant dragon with a strange appearance. Seeing the giant dragon that had disappeared for more than 100 years, everyone was surprised, with a strong curiosity on their faces. And Karakshu was also confused. Why are there so many people outside? Didn't these people see me being beaten in a mess? At this time, Jack, who had chased out, also found everyone in the yard, and the Unsullied hurriedly stepped forward to explain the origins of this group of people. After listening to the Unsullied's explanation, Jack also understood the identity of this group of people, the nobles of Meereen. And the purpose of coming to see him is also very simple. It is nothing more than seeing the overlord of the sky that has been extinct for 100 years, a dragon. Jack put the shoes in his hand on the ground calmly and put them on. In an instant, he changed from an angry old father to an elegant nobleman. You all came to visit without telling me in advance. It is said that family disgrace should not be made public. Now I'm embarrassed. Jack's words were full of meaning, and Sardaridasnak also heard what Jack meant. I heard that the father of dragons is visiting Meereen. As the master of Meereen, it is really wrong not to entertain him well. Sardari emphasized the pronunciation of the word master. Jack smiled, then made an invitation gesture, and invited everyone to the courtyard. Prepare 2 tables, no, 3 tables of banquets. There are many distinguished guests coming today, and I didn't prepare them well. Jack ordered the servants to prepare the banquet, and did not forget to mock the arrogance of the Meereen nobles. Chapter 41 Breakfast Milk. Soon it was night, the heat dissipated, the city of Meereen was brightly lit, and everywhere was full of the dwellings of freemen and nobles. Meereenese rarely rode horses in the city, but preferred to use sedan chairs and sedan chairs carried by slaves. In the yard rented by Jack, more than a dozen nobles were drinking and talking happily with Jack, and Karakshu was lying obediently at Jack's feet. Although Jack smiled at these people on the surface, he actually wanted them to get out of here quickly. If they hadn't brought gifts, Jack wouldn't even want to treat them to this meal. Meereenese are a very cunning race, and the most annoying thing for an honest man like Jack is dealing with cunning people. Mr. Jack, your dragon looks very obedient, but I heard that the dragons of the mother of dragons are very disobedient. Is this true? Costas Carroll asked. What's your name? Jack looked at Costas Carroll. My name is Costas, and I'm the heir of the ancient Kala family. Who are you? Galaza Kala. Do you know my cousin? Costas asked in surprise. Hearing this, Jack roughly understood Costas's identity. Galazagala is a high-ranking priestess of Gis in Meereen, known as the Green Saint, and is about 80 years old. This family showed less hostility to Daenerys Targaryen's rule. After Daenerys Targaryen conquered Meereen, Galaza became one of her advisors. Dany initially wanted to abolish the wearing of toca robes, but Galaza advised her to give up the idea and insisted that she must wear toca robes, otherwise she would be hated forever. However, the Giscari of Meereen still regarded Dany as a barbaric conqueror and absurd outsider, and the Queen of Meereen should show the image of an ancient Gis lady. I saw her once by chance from a distance some time ago. Her hair was white and her skin was as thin as parchment, but the years had not dimmed the brilliance in her eyes. Her eyes were a breathtaking green, which contrasted with the green robe of the Green Saint. Thank you for your compliment. My cousin is the most gentle and knowledgeable person in Meereen. Costas Carroll said proudly. The nobles of Meereen finally put away a bit of their arrogance when they saw Jack's high evaluation of the Green Saint. No matter how many prejudices both sides had against each other, at least on the surface, the guests and the host were enjoying the drink. The scorching sun began to scorch Meereen again. The slaves began a busy day, and the nobles hid in the comfortable pyramid. The sun shone on Jack's face through the window. After he opened his eyes dazedly, he found that Vitelli had begun to show off his verbal skills. 10 minutes later, after Vitelli finished his breakfast milk, he began to serve Jack to dress and wash. Your technique is getting more and more proficient. It seems that Yeager has taught you a lot of skills. Vitelli curled her lips unhappily. I'm over 10 years old. When can I serve you? Over 10 years old. I'm not in a hurry. Why are you in a hurry? What if it breaks? No, Sister Ellie said it's elastic. Many slaves can have children in their teens. Jack took the towel and wiped his face. He felt refreshed. Then he said, did your sister Ellie tell you how high the mortality rate is for 14-year-olds? Vitelli muttered timidly after hearing this. No, less than 30%. Haha, 30% is high, which means that slaves are not worth much. Many slave owners will use slaves with good looks as breeding tools, so that the offspring bred in this way have high looks, and can be sold at a very high price. Jack, who was dressed, was about to take Vitelli to the arena to play, but at this time an Unsullied came to report that when he went to feed them this morning, he found that Karakshu was missing. Jack frowned upon hearing this. He almost never tied up Karakshu. There was a clear hierarchy between Karakshu and him. He was the master. Karakshu had never run around without his order. However, Jack soon ruled out the possibility that Karakshu was stolen. Karakshu was no longer the young dragon. With a wingspan of 2 meters, it was impossible for Karakshu to be stolen. Moreover, Karakshu was in the next room to Jack, and the door was guarded by the Unsullied. So Jack guessed that it was very likely that Karakshu had been hunting on his own some time ago, which led to Karakshu's habit of hunting on his own, so he went out hunting. In this regard, Jack had no choice but to ask several Unsullied to go out to inquire about the news. Meereen was not the Seychelles Islands. It would be bad if it was attacked. You know, the fragile scales of the young dragon could not even defend against bows and arrows. At this time, Karakshu, who was out hunting, had already flown away from the territory of Meereen and entered the sphere of influence of Yunque. At the same time, outside Yunque, Daenerys met Mero, the Titan bastard, and 2 other captains. Your Majesty, please allow me to introduce you to the captain of the Second Sons, Mero of Bravos, Purin Danakison, and Barristan looked at the young man on the far right. Dario Naharis. Dario introduced himself, and then nodded slightly to show his friendliness. Mero showed a disdainful smile on his face, took a few steps forward, and looked at Daenerys. Are you the mother of dragons? Daenerys smiled and said nothing. The meaning was self-evident. I must have played with you in Cunion. Silver hair, purple eyes. I'm too familiar with you. Mero's face was full of mockery. Watch your tongue. Jorah couldn't listen anymore. If it wasn't for Dana's order, he would have drawn his sword directly. But Mero didn't care at all. Instead, he looked at Jorah provocatively and asked, why stop? I don't mind her little tongue. Mero actually went forward and sat not far from Daenerys. That woman licked my buttocks. That skill is really innate. Mero stretched out his tongue and flicked it in the air. You, little slave girl, bring some wine. Mero said to Miss Andry. Dany suppressed her anger and said with a smile, there are no slaves here. In addition, the prostitute you are in Cuneo should be a descendant of Blackfy. I will introduce a Blackfy to you another day and pass on your words to him intactly. Oh, really? Then his skills must be very good, but unfortunately I don't like men. In addition, after the war is over, you will all be slaves. Mero said nonchalantly. Unless I give the order. Mero looked at Dany arrogantly, with a self-righteous smile on his face. I don't believe that I can't send it out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. Don't be so disgusting. Even if you add the slave soldiers from Yunque, your people are not as many as my Unsullied, right? Dany tried to negotiate with Mero. Barristan added at the right time. We have 10,000 Unsullied. Danny, I'm just a young woman who does not know the way of war. Perhaps a captain like you who has been in battle for a long time would be willing to explain to me how you can win. At this time, Dario spoke. I hope this old man is better at swordsmanship than at talking. You only have 9,000 unsullied. Excluding the unsullied who manage the free soldiers, you have at most 8,000 unsullied participating in the war. And you have no siege equipment, no war horses, nothing. We may not lose. Hearing this, Danny's smile disappeared, and Dario also looked at Danny meaningfully. You are so young, and you can be a captain? He is not a captain, he is a captain. Puranda explained. Even if the number you said is so different, your chances of winning are still slim. The smile on Danny's face disappeared completely at this moment. I will pay you the same fee, or even more. Danny said seriously. At this time, Mero didn't listen to Daenerys' chatter. He was looking at Missandei who was pouring wine for him with a perverted look on his face. Then he suddenly stretched his head and sniffed Missandei's butt. Missandei quickly dodged and looked at Mero with disgust. Puranda said at this time, the contract is a lifeline. If the lifeline is cut off, no one will be willing to sign a contract with the Second Sons. Pachi, do you still have credibility in the Second Sons? At this time, a mocking voice suddenly sounded from outside the tent. Then a handsome young man walked in, followed by a team of unsullied. The boy's disdainful sneer caused Mero's dissatisfaction. He looked at Danny with an unhappy face. Is this sissy your little white face? Then Mero said to the boy again, why did I tease your master and make you angry? Barristan's face changed, and he immediately warned, watch your words, be careful not to lose your life. Barristan knew Jack's temper. Once Jack killed Mero here, there would be basically no possibility of cooperation with the Second Sons, and even a war would break out directly. If Jack left at that time, they would be the ones in trouble, so Barristan warned him. Jack first stepped forward and hugged Missandei's flexible waist, and then sat on the other side of Daenerys. Missandei's face was slightly red, but she did not resist. When Jack went to see Daenerys before, he also liked to hold her and talk to Danny, and she was almost used to it. Of course, the most important thing is that Jack is young, handsome, rich and powerful. Not to mention the difference in status that Missandei cannot refuse. Missandei herself does not hate Jack himself. Are you the Titan's illegitimate son? Why are you called this? Is it because your mother kissed anyone and she didn't know who your father was, so she just gave you this nickname? I may not know the name you mentioned. My name is Jack Poseidon. Has your mother mentioned my name to you? Enough. Mero stared at Jack with a grim expression. Little beast, I will train you well after the war, so that you can't even die. Daenerys chuckled. Then I'm afraid Captain Mero has no chance. Jack is not my male favorite. Although I really want to do so, I don't have the strength yet. Besides, this is the descendant of Blackfire I want to introduce to you, Jack Blackfire. After that, Danny gave Jack a meaningful look, as if to say, why doesn't my little male favorite come over, and why is he always holding my maid? Jack put Missandei's legs on his own legs, and then put his hand into Missandei's already few clothes. Don't call me Blackfire, call me Poseidon. I don't like the name Blackfire very much. Whether in Westeros or Essos, bastards are not a compliment. Well, Captain Mero, this is the descendant of Blackfire I want to introduce to you, Jack Poseidon, a powerful leader who commands thousands of unsullied. In Danny's impression, Jack is a pirate leader, but for Jack, piracy is just a way to make a fortune at the beginning. There is no way out to be a pirate unless you can break through the city-state. Otherwise, how much money can you make by robbing merchant ships and coastal villages? Then Danny ignored Mero and asked Jack, why are you here? My son got lost. Someone said he was seen coming here, so I ran all the way to Yunque. Maybe your son has been captured by the slave owner and castrated. I believe your son will become an excellent unsullied in a few years. Then Mero looked up at Grey Worm, just like him. Grey Worm glanced at Mero, suppressed the urge to cut him into pieces, and continued to stand behind Daenerys without looking away. If my son can really be as obedient as the unsullied in a few years, I will be thankful. By the way, did he smell your butt just now? Maybe when he leaves, you can produce some pink poop as a gift for him, so that he can have something to eat with wine tonight. Jack said to Missandei. Missandei looked disgusted and said in a disgusted tone, "Can you please stop saying such disgusting things? His appearance makes me sick." Missandei got out of Jack's arms and turned to pour wine for Jack. "Sorry, I won't do it next time." Jack apologized to Missandei directly and then said to Mero, "It seems that you can only eat dog shit. Oh, I forgot, you have horses and people. You can eat planders, Derios, or even horses. Oh, why are you looking at me so crazy? Don't even think about it. I would rather give it to my dog than to you." Jack shouted exaggeratedly, as if he had encountered something terrible. Mero was so angry that his face was dizzy. He stood up and came to Jack. Just as he was about to speak, he was kicked 5 or 6 meters away by Jack. Jack's physical fitness was strengthened 3 times by the worker ant serum, and the heart of the ocean slowly strengthened Jack's physical strength, making Jack's physical fitness very terrifying now. Although Jack thought at the beginning that the heart of the ocean would not strengthen his body, as time went on, Jack discovered that, in order to adapt his body to the deep sea, the heart of the ocean would continue to strengthen his body, which was an unexpected surprise. This scene directly shocked everyone present. No one expected that Jack, a fair-skinned boy, would have such a strong power. Especially Baristan, you know, to kick a strong man 5 or 6 meters away. This power is definitely not weaker than the mountain, and it is even much stronger than the mountain. Jack sat back in his seat and said calmly, "Don't get so close to me, buddy. Did you really eat shit? You stink before you even come over. I hope it can be sent out." Chapter 43. This is not my dragon. With the help of Plander, Mero stood up and returned to his seat. He stared at Jack, not expecting Jack to be so strong. However, the kick just now was unexpected, but skills and equipment were needed on the battlefield. Mero thought that Jack would not be his opponent when fully armed, so he was already thinking about how to torture him after capturing Jack. As for what Daenerys said, sorry, Mero was so angry at the time that he didn't hear a word. Seeing this, Daenerys spoke again. "The contract is not a problem. As long as you fight for me, you will no longer need a contract in the future. After I take back the 7 kingdoms, you can choose the wealth, castles and titles." Dario said the same thing after hearing this. "You have no warships, no siege equipment, no war horses. How can you fight the 7 kingdoms? Daenerys showed a proud look when she heard this. "A few months ago I didn't have an army, and more than a year ago I didn't even have dragons." Looking at Mero, Dany directly issued an ultimatum. "I'll give you 2 days to consider it." Seeing this, Mero sat up slightly straighter, showing a serious look. "Show me your cunt, let me see it, and then I will decide whether you are worthy of me fighting for you." This sentence was extremely insulting, and Grey Worm directly took out a dagger. "Your Majesty, do you want me to cut off his tongue?" "No, he is my guest," Daenerys said. Since she invited several people to negotiate, as the host, she naturally couldn't do anything to the guests. Otherwise, how could she negotiate in the future? Daenerys would still abide by this rule. Otherwise, if Dany had any ideas of the Free family, Mero would not be able to leave this military tent. At this moment, a dull dragon roar suddenly came from above, and then a red baby dragon broke through the tent and flew in, dragging a goat on its claws. Hiss. Karakho, who rushed in, roared at the others, and the blood at the corner of his mouth made Karakho even more weird. Even the battle-hardened Mero couldn't help but dodge back. "Mother of dragons, take care of your dragon, or I don't mind killing it." Mero was still stubborn. But it's not his fault. Even Daenerys couldn't help but dodge back instinctively. After all, this is not her son. "I'm afraid I can't control it, because this is not my child," Daenerys said nervously. "You are the mother of dragons. If it's not your dragon, whose dragon could it be?" "Koraksu, where did you steal the goat? You didn't kill innocent shepherds, did you?" Then, in the surprised eyes of Mero and the other two, Koraksu dragged the goat to Jack's legs and began to enjoy the prey. Jack stroked Koraksu's big head and said, "It's okay if you don't kill anyone. You must get my order before you kill anyone." After saying that, Jack suddenly looked up and glanced at Mero and the other two, and the 3 of them became nervous. Koraksu seemed to feel the sight of his master, and he stood up and stared at Mero and the other two, growling in his throat, and sparks burst out between his sharp teeth. Mero and the other two immediately put their hands on the long swords at their waists, ready to fight Jack at any time. However, Jack just smiled lightly. Koraksu, eat quickly. Hearing this, Koraksu immediately started to eat heartily and ignored Mero and the other two. Seeing this, Mero and the other three slowly let down their guard, but they were not going to stay here, so they stood up and prepared to leave. Daenerys called Mero and said, "I'll give you 2 days to think about it." Said Jorah, "Give them a cart of fine wine as a gift for this meeting." Jorah took the order and took a team to get the wine, and Mero accepted the cart of fine wine without hesitation. However, they didn't expect that this cart of fine wine would become the poison that buried the second sons, and they didn't expect that Daario had already set his eyes on the beautiful dragon queen and was about to send their heads to Dany. After Mero and the other two left, Dany turned her attention to Jack. "When will you go back? Aren't you going to rob on the sea?" Her voice was slightly teasing. "Robbery? How much money can I make from that? I have sent some large ships to Bravos for renovation, and the other part has to go on business. How can I have time to rob?" Atlantis has a total of 223 ships, including 39 large ships, all of which were sent to Bravos for renovation. At the same time, a batch of long ships were ordered. The remaining small and medium-sized merchant ships were all used to purchase supplies. How could they have ships to rob? As for the giant ships snatched from the 13 magnates, it was so slow that you couldn't even smell their farts, let alone rob them. How long can your money last? How about you become my naval commander? I'll support you and your army. How about that? Daenerys was still thinking about recruiting Jack. "If you can take me, Reen, I'll be your naval commander and even transport your army back to Westeros in the future." For Jack, there is no harm in joining Dany's side in the early stage. The entire Game of Thrones world revolves around Dany's retaking the Iron Throne. So there must be a battle between Dany and the Baratheon dynasty, and Jack himself can make a lot of money from it, based on his foresight. And if Dany was not assassinated by Jon Snow, who knows everything, Dany would definitely be the final winner. It's just that the series is very different from the original novel, and Jack is not sure what it will be like in the end. The most important thing is the dragon. The gender of the dragon has always been a mystery. Regarding the reproduction of dragons, Brother Bath, Mr. Mukin and Mr. Thomas have completely different views. In short, there are 3 viewpoints. The first is that dragons have no gender and reproduce themselves. The second is that dragons are hermaphrodites and will automatically change gender when they reach age. The third is that dragons are divided into male and female. According to Jack's own observations, he found that until now, Koraksu has not shown obvious gender characteristics. Jack had also secretly observed the 3 brothers of Drogon before, and they also had no obvious gender characteristics. This means that the dragons are likely to be hermaphroditic or genderless in their infancy. Later, they will slowly transform into male or female during the growth process, but the basis and influencing factors of this transformation are not yet clear. Maybe it is related to the influence of the owner's gender, or maybe it is related to the temperature. These can only wait for Jack to study slowly, but in any case, Jack must choose to stand on Daenerys' side. Not only because Jack wants to breed dragons, but more importantly, Jack's own identity, the descendant of Blackfire, the blood branch of the Targaryen family, and like Daenerys, he has dragons. These external conditions are destined that the Baratheon dynasty of Westeros will not be friendly with himself, and may even default to Dany's camp, and then be hostile to himself. Therefore, considering all the above conditions, before having the power to overturn the world, it is the best choice to temporarily join Dany's camp. What's more, Dany is a woman. A woman can be a queen, and she can also be one of man's harem. When Dany stays in Meereen to rule, Jack can definitely help. When Dany is trapped in the Meereen knot, with Dany's love-brained personality, there may be a chance to take Dany in with her dragon. Thinking of this, Jack looked at Dany with a little more desire in his eyes, and the undisguised desire naturally fell into Dany's eyes. Dany not only did not avoid it, but also gave Jack a provocative wink. In Dany's heart now, Jack is a very perfect marriage partner. He has ships, troops, and dragons. The most important thing is that Jack's Blackfire blood can greatly guarantee the purity of the Targaryen family bloodline. Chapter 44 Night Raid. Since Jack had nothing to do in Meereen, he stayed with Danny. In the evening, Daenerys got up from Jack's arms with a little dizziness. In the afternoon, she and Jack discussed the next plan while drinking. Because Danny wanted to get more wonderful ideas from Jack, she was drunk by Jack without knowing it. After getting up, she found that Jack was not drunk at all. Danny sat on Jack directly and said unhappily, "You are not drunk at all?" That look seemed to say, "You didn't get drunk and went to bed with me? Wouldn't you let Miss Andrew serve me?" "Of course I'm not drunk. How can I get drunk by drinking wine?" The alcohol content of wine in the world of Game of Thrones is between 10 and 20 degrees, which is not considered a high alcohol content. In addition, Jack's body has been strengthened, and his metabolism is fast, so it is impossible for him to get drunk. Jack flipped over and switched the positions of both parties, then said, "But you really can't drink. You get drunk after a few drinks, and you're still drunk. You have to ride on top. Isn't it nice to be on top?" After making up his mind, Jack deliberately asked Danny to set up a banquet, and then got Danny drunk, and took Danny's body first, before talking about other things. When Danny heard Jack's words, she showed shame and anger on her face, especially now that she was the lower position and Jack was the upper position. "That's because you always made me drink. You really have the nerve to say that," Danny said angrily. "I thought you could drink a lot. How can you not drink at a banquet?" After saying that, Jack found the entrance to the garden and walked in, and then began to walk back and forth quickly, preparing to water the flower cores inside and spread pollen. Danny, who was about to refute, suddenly lost her confidence. After all, her house was robbed, and now the most important thing is to protect the house. More than half an hour later, Jack left Anna's tent refreshed and prepared to get something to eat. He was hungry after the exercise. After Jack left, Miss Andy came in and began to wipe Dana's body. "Your Majesty, I remember that you can drink a lot." Miss Andy finally couldn't hold back her doubts and asked. Danny laughed. "I don't know what that guy thought of at noon," and his eyes were suddenly full of desire when he looked at me. "In this case, I'll give him a chance. Anyway, I won't suffer any loss. Your Majesty, it is very likely that your dragon attracted him. I think it's better to be careful. After all, everyone can see his ability to tame dragons." Miss Andy felt that she still had to remind Danny not to let Jack take the young dragon away. Danny gave Miss Andy a reassuring look. "Don't worry, I don't completely believe him. I know what my confidence is and who I should trust. Daenerys is not stupid. Unlike the stupid image in American TV series, the character image in the original book is more intelligent and adaptable. And she thinks it's a good thing that Jack has something to do with her so that she can tie Jack to her pirate ship. What she feared most was that Jack had no interest in her. If that happened, she couldn't even win Jack over, let alone a marriage. After all, a marriage mainly depends on how much help the two parties can provide to each other. If the two people in the marriage were originally in love, then it was just luck. "Miss Andy, go get a bucket of water. I want to take a shower. He made me all over." "Okay, wait a minute." Miss Andy turned to prepare hot water. Jack came to the cooking camp, where a large amount of supplies were stored. "Is there anything to eat? Get me some." "My lord, we are preparing to cook." "Please wait a moment." A cook was cleaning the ingredients. Jack raised his eyebrows. Normally, when there is no battle, the army would not eat this meal at night. Is Danny preparing a night attack? Thinking of this, Jack suddenly remembered that in the original book of Game of Thrones, Daenerys gave Mero a cart of wine and took advantage of the second sons being drunk that night to directly launch a night attack and completely annihilate the second sons on the flank. This is different from the American TV series, where it was Dario who killed the two captains and then surrendered to Daenerys. But in the original book, the second sons were hired by the slave city-state Yunkai to resist the threat of Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons. They were on the left wing of the defense line, facing Daenerys' army. They were commanded by Mero, known as the Bastard of the Titans. In the negotiations with Daenerys, he asked for more gold in exchange for his support. In addition, he also took a cart of good wine from Daenerys and returned it to the second sons, preparing to enjoy it when negotiating the price she offered. Daenerys readily agreed to send the wine. The second sons got drunk because of this, and that night Daenerys' men launched an attack and easily defeated the second sons who had no defense, and Mero had no choice but to flee. The remaining mercenaries elected Brown Ben Plum as their captain. They joined Daenerys' army. Jack frowned. He didn't know whether this world was based on the American TV series or the original novel, but it was undeniable that he would inevitably change the direction of the plot to a certain extent in the future. Thinking of this, Jack stopped thinking about it. He was not afraid of changing the plot. As long as his own strength was strong enough, it didn't matter how the plot changed. Just like the so-called natural barriers in Westeros, Poseidon's atomic breath could even get through the inner world of the earth, not to mention the walls that even dragon flames could not stop. Even if he didn't rely on Poseidon, and only relied on Kharakshu, Jack was not inferior to Westeros. To be honest, in the American TV series, Dany directly flew a dragon to her face, and Cersei had no chance at all, let alone the loss of Viserion and Regal. My lord, has his majesty woken up? At this moment, Grey Worm appeared in front of Jack. Wake up, are you planning to attack the second sons at night? Grey Worm was stunned, not understanding how Jack knew this, but he still said, yes, young K has 5,000 slave soldiers and 2,000 mercenaries. If we defeat the mercenaries, young K's slave soldiers will be easier to deal with. Jack then returned to Dany's tent, and Dany had already washed herself. Are you planning to attack the second sons at night tonight? Yes, otherwise why would we send them a cart of wine? Once the second sons are destroyed, we can incite the slave soldiers to rebel, and completely liberate young K. Then I will return to Meereen to hide some weapons, and then see if I can use the same method to incite the slaves of Meereen to rebel. Dany's eyes lit up. Yes, the slave owners of Meereen didn't know that I had slept with the father of dragons at this time, so I could let Jack go to Meereen to make preparations first. Okay, do you need me to give you some unsullied? Dany asked. No, the Sea King is nearby, and there are 300 unsullied on board. If there are too many people, it will attract the attention of the slave owners, and the loss will outweigh the gain. Then the Meereen accomplice is left to you, so be careful. After that, Dany kissed Jack gently on the corner of his mouth. Jack patted Dany's butt. Don't worry, no one is more afraid of death than me. That night, Jack rode back to Meereen, and Daenerys' night attack plan successfully defeated the second sons. Under Daenerys' deception, Pyranda and Daario chose to take the remaining people to surrender to Daenerys. Dany incorporated the second sons into her own army, and let Jorah be the leader, and Pyranda and Daario became deputy leaders. The second sons, who only had a few hundred people left, had no confidence to refuse, and could only obey Dany's orders. The only pity was that Mero ran away in the chaos. Not killing Mero was always a hidden danger. Chapter 45 The Evolution of Dragons. A mansion in Meereen. Jack opened Kharakshu's mouth and reached out to touch the two fuel pipes inside his mouth. Kharakshu's body trembled when the fuel pipes were touched. It was obvious that the fuel pipes were very sensitive and fragile. Quiet, it's okay, believe me, Kharakshu. Jack gently comforted Kharakshu. Then he continued to study the fuel pipes in Kharakshu's mouth. It is said that the dragon's dragon flame is fire magic, and the disappearance and appearance of magic coincide with the disappearance and appearance of the dragon, so this statement has been generally recognized by the warlock community. Jack didn't care about the connection between the appearance of the dragon and the magic tide, but noticed an organ in the dragon's mouth. Jack named this organ a fuel pipe. The pair of fuel pipes grew on both sides of the dragon's mouth. Kharakshu's fuel pipe was a little closer to the inside, while Drogon's was very obvious. Jack carefully observed Kharakshu's fire breathing, and it was certain that the fuel pipe would spray out some mist-like flammable gas when it was spitting fire. But Jack still hasn't figured out how Kharakshu ignites these gases. Perhaps it's bioelectricity, or perhaps it's magic. But no matter what the method is, it's enough to make Jack marvel at creatures like dragons. In his previous life, many biologists studied why animals on the blue planet did not evolve the ability to breathe fire. After all, in the era of prehistoric biological evolution, fire can be said to be the most powerful weapon on Earth. The most widely spread and most recognized theory is that the evolution of the fire-breathing function is too cost-effective, because if you want to breathe fire, you must evolve a large enough lung capacity, fuel injectors and fuel storage tanks. The complex evolutionary process has caused animals to give up the characteristic of breathing fire. But the dragon in the Game of Thrones, although it is an air force at the level of a nuclear bomb, it is simply a pterosaur that can breathe fire, which is far from the dragon in mythology. This makes Jack very interested in the evolution process of the dragon. As for the legend, the dragon was transformed by the Valyrians using blood magic and pterosaurs. Jack sneered at this. He didn't believe that the Valyrians, a small nomadic people, would have such advanced blood magic. For a nomadic people who depend on the weather for food, it is good enough to have enough food. How can they have the leisure time to study such advanced blood magic? Unfortunately, Jack himself is not a biologist, and there is no such high-tech civilization to support Jack's research. Reluctantly letting go of Koraku, Jack patted the cage and ordered, "Enter." Koraku got into the wooden cage without hesitation. Although the wooden cage had no binding force, for Koraku, the real binding force came from the owner, not the wooden cage. "Great, good boy." Jack rubbed Koraku's head, then opened the wooden cage and let Koraku out again. At this time, an unsullied came in. "Your Majesty, the things you asked for have been done. A total of 1,126 knives have been collected, and 300 unsullied have all sneaked into the city. Okay, hide the weapons, and then wait. It will probably be a short time before the news from young Cai will come." Sure enough, that afternoon, the news that young Cai had been conquered by Daenerys reached Meereen. The nobles of Meereen held an emergency meeting to discuss how to deal with Dany, who had 9,000 unsullied and an unknown number of slave soldiers. In the end, everyone gave up the idea of hiring soldiers. The hiring money of mercenaries was too expensive. Ordinary mercenaries had to pay about 100 gold dragons to participate in the war, and senior officers had to pay more. The walls of Meereen were tall and strong enough, and there were enough slave soldiers in the city. There were also many gladiators who could participate in the war. They were not afraid of Dany relying on the walls. In the end, they built walls and cleared the fields. A fire directly burned down the manor farms outside the city, and all available resources including food and cash crops were destroyed, leaving no resources for the mother of dragons. After the discussion, everyone immediately started to act. Everyone was fully prepared, but they forgot the sewers of Meereen. On the other side, after conquering young Cai, Dany liberated nearly 300,000 slaves. Everyone held Dany in their hands and raised her high, shouting "Mother." Dany enjoyed the feeling of being relied on by everyone, and also enjoyed the pride of being admired and surrounded by everyone. But after enjoying it, we still have to consider the reality. After confirming that tens of thousands of people are willing to leave with her, Dany still took these burdens with her, although she knew that this would bring great pressure to the logistics. The speed of Dany's army, which has expanded several times, has slowed down a lot. It is a total of 163 miles from Meereen to young Cai. As Dany continued to approach Meereen, she became more and more angry. On this road, a slave child would be nailed to the cross and died tragically every mile. Jorah came to Dany and said, "Your Majesty, Meereen has adopted the tactic of erecting walls and clearing the fields. All the slave manors around have been burned to ashes, and there is no supplies at all." Dany's chest rose and fell slightly. She didn't expect that the slave owners in Meereen would do such a thing. The erection of walls and clearing the fields by the Meereen nobles undoubtedly greatly increased the logistical pressure of Daenerys' army. Before, she brought these new free people with her, just to rob the manors along the way, but she didn't expect Meereen to directly erect walls and clear the fields. It's okay. Although our logistics pressure is great, we can still get supplies after conquering Meereen. After liberating the 3 cities in Slaver's Bay, we can take Jack's ship to cross the sea to attack Westeros and take back my Iron Throne. Jorah's face was embarrassed when he heard this. As a man, and even more of a senior lickdog, he naturally understood what it meant for the cunning Jack to lend Dany a warship. It was a pity that he was not there that day, and the drunk queen was tricked by Jack and lost her body. It was originally only a few days' journey, but Dany's army took more than a month to reach Meereen. camping not far away, Daenerys led the vanguard troops to the foot of Meereen. At this time, the city wall was full of nobles watching the show, and a large number of slave soldiers were preparing city defense equipment. At this time, the gate of Meereen slowly opened a gap, and then a horse-riding warrior rushed out and came to the opposite side of Dany. This is the tradition of Meereen. They send out the strongest gladiators in their arena to fight one-on-one with the enemy. This is a good way to boost morale and intimidate the enemy, Jorah explained. At this time, Jack in the stands was watching the urinating gladiators, mocking Dany. How dare a rootless army led by a woman attack Meereen? Chapter 46, The Way of Governance, Ideological Basis. Dany was a little annoyed by the humiliating action of peeing. The guy kept insulting Dany, but Dany didn't understand. Missandei then translated the words of the Meereen champion. Hearing the humiliating words, Barristan said there was no need to pay attention to this meaningless provocation. Jorah retorted, if we want to win the support of more than half of the slave soldiers in Meereen, we can't ignore it. Dany turned and looked at the generals behind her. I have something to say to the slaves of Meereen, but before that, who can make that guy shut up? Do we have a champion willing to fight? Dany asked. Please grant me this honor, your majesty. I will never let you down. Grey Worm asked directly. Now the people under Dany have begun to divide into factions. Jorah, Barristan, and the newly joined Prenda and Daario have each formed a faction, and Grey Worm is no exception. And Grey Worm is no longer the numb slave before. He has his own ideas. However, unlike other people who pursued interests, fighting for Dany and getting Dany's praise and trust were what Grey Worm wanted most. However, Dany rejected Grey Worm's request. The opponent was Meereen's champion gladiator, who was also a knight. Grey Worm was at a disadvantage as an infantryman. You are the commander of the Unsullied, and I can't let you take risks. At this time, Barristan also expressed his position. Your Majesty, I have absolute confidence in fighting alone in the world. So you should stay with me. Dany rejected Barristan without thinking. Although Barristan's strength was also very strong, he was so old after all. If something went wrong, Dany would lose another commanding talent. Then Jorah also asked to fight, but was still rejected by Dany, saying that you are my capable general and advisor, and I can't let you take risks. Finally, Daario asked to fight. I have been with you the shortest time, and I'm not the commander of the Unsullied. Please allow me to fight for you. Daario here is different from the American TV series. Although he is still attracted by Dany's beauty, he did not kill Mero and Piranda as in the American TV series. Instead, he joined Dany after Mero was defeated, just like in the original book. Dany looked at Daario with Bluebeard and agreed to his fight. Originally, Dany planned to let Daario fight. As a mercenary who joined later, Dany did not trust him very much. Daario rejected Daenerys' suggestion to ride a horse. Horses are much dumber than people. Don't worry, your majesty, I won't let you down. Then Daario came to the front, and the champion gladiator of Meereen City immediately jumped on the horse and rushed towards Daario amid the cheers of the Meereen nobles. However, Daario drew out his dagger calmly. When the Meereen champion approached, his eyes fixed, and he threw the dagger in his hand directly. In the surprised eyes of everyone, he accurately hit the right eye of the Meereen gladiator's warhorse. Hit by the dagger, the warhorse fell to the ground, and the champion gladiator of Meereen was thrown away by the warhorse before he could react. Seeing the Meereen champion thrown in front of him by the warhorse, Daario elegantly drew out his scimitar and cut off the head of the Meereen champion. The slave owners and nobles on the city wall cursed, thinking that this gladiator's silver spear wax head was useless. The angry slave owner immediately ordered the archer to shoot, but unfortunately the range was not enough, and all the arrows were shot at Daario's feet. Then, in the angry eyes of the Meereen nobles, Daario urinated, and the humiliation was self-evident. Jack on the city wall saw this scene and became playful. Then he took the strong bow in the hands of the Unsullied beside him, and came to the edge of the city wall. He pushed the noble in front of him away. The noble was about to scold him angrily, but was frightened by the roar of Karaku, who had been following Jack. Karaku was very good at sensing Jack's emotions and cooperating with Jack, which was shown in its ancestors. Jack during the Dance of the Dragons was able to perfectly understand the thoughts and emotions of the rider Aemon Targaryen. It is worth mentioning that Aemon Targaryen's Caracu was the dragon that breathed fire most frequently. Jack could also see this from Caracu. Jack guessed that it might be related to Caracu's slender neck. Jack drew his bow and arrow, then suddenly let go, and the arrow flew towards Dario. Before Dario could pull up his pants, he was cut on the cheek by an arrow. Dario, who was attacked, immediately stepped back a few steps and looked up, only to see a young man with short blonde and white hair attracting his bow and arrow with a smile on his face. Dario recognized the man instantly. Wasn't he the boy who kicked Mero away that day? He was actually from Meereen. Ignoring the nobles who were still cursing on the city wall, Dario reported his discovery to Daenerys, while Dany looked calm, as if she had expected it. Dany stepped forward and came behind dozens of arrows. After confirming that she was in a safe position, Daenerys began her speech. Dany started from the beginning of her liberation of Astapor and continued to talk about it until now. The general meaning was that I liberated the slaves along the way. I'm not your enemy. Your enemy is the slave owner. Some slave owners who were watching the show on the city wall found that something was wrong, so they immediately called their slaves to leave. Forward. Dany gave an order, and several catapults were pushed out. Fire. The catapult started, and a large number of wooden barrels were thrown onto the walls of Meereen. As the wooden barrels broke, countless cut slave shackles fell. A young slave squatted down and picked up a shackle, then slowly turned his head and looked at his master. For a moment, the atmosphere on the city wall began to become subtle. Hiss. A roar sounded, and 3 young dragons appeared on the city wall and began to demonstrate. For a moment, the entire city wall began to riot, and countless nobles left with their slaves. Seeing this scene, Jack realized that Dany's first step had been successful, and it was estimated that she would start walking down the sewer tonight. Seeing this, Jack also stood up and prepared to leave, but Daznak stopped Jack at this time. Father of Dragons, please wait a moment. Jack turned around, put his hand on the hilt of the sword, and showed a puzzled look on his face. Mr. Sadari, what do you want me to do? Sadari Daznak showed an embarrassed look on his face, and asked tentatively, Father of Dragons, can you take the trouble to let your eel dragon drive away the 3 evil dragons? Jack raised his eyebrows, not expecting that this was the idea. Lord Daznak, you are not kidding, are you? Jack used a polite title directly. The mother of dragons has 3 dragons. The black one is about the same size as my child. Do you want my child to die? Sadari Daznak's face was embarrassed. He knew that Jack would not agree. After all, it was not feasible, and it was very dangerous to fight 1 against 3. Giving up one's life was not a joke. The dog was in good condition and very strong. Not bad, not bad. Chapter 47 Sparks of Fire. Night. After the morning incident, the entire Meereen city fell into a very delicate atmosphere. For a while, the slave owners and slaves kept staring at each other. In Dany's base camp, Grey Worm, this time you will lead the team. Take advantage of the night to sneak into the city through the sewers of Meereen. Later, Jack's people will pick you up. After we incite the slaves to revolt, we can occupy Meereen. Understood, Your Majesty. I will never let you down. Then Grey Worm took a team of Unsullied, carried a large number of weapons, and rowed towards the sewers of Meereen in a small longboat. After hiding the boat, Grey Worm led people into the sewers of Meereen. The sewers of Meereen were not complicated, and soon Grey Worm came to the exit inside the city wall. Squeak, squeak. Grey Worm made a regular mouse sound. A few seconds later, Jack appeared with 2 Unsullied. Come with me, I will take you to the underground cages, where the slaves are held. Just as Jack led people to the basement where the slaves lived, the slaves inside the basement were discussing what happened in the morning. She can save us. Everyone should have heard her words. She said she would liberate us and give us freedom. Freedom, said a young slave. He longed for freedom. He was still young. You are a fool. The masters are too strong, said a skinny old man. The young slave did not agree with the old man's words. She said she would protect us as long as we stand up and resist. Looking at the slaves around him who were still silent, the young slave continued to cheer them up. She defeated the master's strongest gladiator. Ignoring the people who looked at each other in confusion, he continued, "She has a powerful army. She can save us. Do you want to wear shackles for the rest of your life?" As he said this, he shook the collar on his neck. This thing bound him for life. At this time, a middle-aged slave seemed to be touched in the sore spot. "I want to live. Have you seen how they treat children? Think about how they will treat us. I have experienced 2 slave rebellions, child, and the results are the same. The slaves failed, and the masters succeeded." The thin old man at the beginning said, "The masters continue to have supreme power, and the slaves are tortured to death." Jack happened to walk in with Grey Worm at this time. The guards outside had been quietly dealt with, and Jack's 300 unsullied had taken over the largest slave cage. "All mortals must die." Grey Worm's voice attracted everyone's attention. "I assure you, one day of freedom is better than a lifetime of slavery." The thin old man stood up and asked in surprise, "I know all the slaves here. Who are you?" "An unsullied. I was captured by slave owners when I was young and trained to be an unsullied, but now I fight for denaries, who is the one who breaks shackles." The old man shook his head. "You are an unsullied. They taught you to fight since childhood, but..." The old man looked at the skinny slaves behind him and said, "We are just a group of ordinary slaves, not soldiers, and we have no weapons." Hearing this, Grey Worm smiled, and all the unsullied opened their backpacks, which were full of weapons, including hundreds of daggers. "Now we have it. We not only have the mother of dragons, but also the father of dragons. He has enough weapons to arm thousands of people." Brothers, every slave owner in Meereen has an average of 3 slaves. No one can give you freedom, only yourself. Father of dragons, sorry, forgive me for being blunt. I heard that the father of dragons has a good relationship with the slave owners, and slave owners often visit the father of dragons with gifts. Grey Worm didn't say anything, just looked at Jack behind him, and everyone's eyes followed Grey Worm's gaze and looked at Jack. Jack frowned, which was very different from the plot of American dramas. There was not even a guard here like in American dramas. This group of slaves was not like in American dramas, where they were incited to rebellion by Grey Worm's words. On the contrary, their fear of the slave owners had penetrated into their bones, and only some young slaves showed a look of intention. Jack walked to the center of the crowd, and then in the slightly terrified eyes of the crowd, a young dragon of more than 2 meters long slowly crawled in from the entrance and finally crawled to Jack's feet. The momentum has been built up, and Jack can only try his best to incite these slaves to revolt. At this point, it would be a pity if he fails. Friends, listen to me. Now a precious chance to regain freedom is in front of us. Shouldn't we fight for it? Are you willing to wear a collar for the rest of your life, living in a dark and damp basement with rats? Do you know how extravagant the life of a slave owner is? Do you know how much milk and bread the slave owners in Meereen waste every day? I tell you, 50,000 gold dragons. You lowly slaves will never see gold dragons in your life, and they throw away 50,000 every day. This money can't even fit in a carriage. It can buy you milk and bread that you can't finish eating in your lifetime. You can live as humbly as a bug, and you can live without soft white bread and fresh milk. But they can't take away the only freedom and dignity you have left. Dignity and freedom are our weapons. Our enemies are powerful, but they are not slave owners, nor are they noble lords, but slavery. It is this slavery that has lasted for 1,000 years, like a mountain, that has broken your spine and smoothed your blood. You have been slaves for generations. You don't know the taste of freedom, but do you still not know the taste of slavery? Have you ever thought about your own children? Would you rather watch your children eat pig food and be imprisoned and whipped for a lifetime, or would you rather fight a fight and let them taste the taste of white bread and milk? Friends, if we don't seize this opportunity and fight this battle, then our next generation will have to fight, and even the next generation will have to fight. Friends, we can't give up this opportunity. Slave owners are also people. They will die if they are killed. We must unite all the forces that can be united. We want to overthrow the slave owners who oppress us. We want to live in warm and comfortable stone houses. We want bread and milk on our dining table. We need a visionary leader who can lead you to crush the bones of the slave owners, and this person is in front of you. I, the father of dragons, I promise that I will personally lead you to overthrow the slave owners. As long as we can overthrow the slave owners, everyone's table will be filled with endless food, and everyone can own their own house. But even though Jack's speech was eloquent and gave them a beautiful blueprint for the future, many older slaves were still full of hesitation and fear of the slave owners. But they were a minority after all. A young slave stood up, waved his right hand, and shouted, "Overthrow them." His face flushed with excitement. Jack's words made him regain his desire for freedom and dignity. He was still young, and he couldn't live a humble life like this. Jack pointed at the young man and said excitedly, "We will crush them." This completely ignited all the young slaves. They stood up one after another and shouted overthrow them crazily. To be honest, Jack didn't expect that the words he made up on the spot would have such a good effect. He just wanted to give it a try. It can only be said that these young slaves have not been completely enslaved. At least their souls are still passionate and yearning for freedom. This scene also infected other people. The thin old man who was not optimistic about this had a ruthless look in his eyes. He was old and had only a few years to live. His 3 sons died in the first 2 efforts to revolutionize. The 2 failed slave revolutions and self-help movements left him with a shadow. But this time is different. This time there is a charismatic and visionary leader. In this case, he will fight. What if it succeeds? Jack didn't notice the old man's change. He still shouted with all his might, "Friends, a single spark can start a prairie fire. Pick up the weapons on the ground, open the city gates, and cooperate with the mother of dragons to take down Meereen." Slogan: a single spark can start a prairie fire. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Chapter 48, The Fall of Meereen. It is not as easy as an American TV series to capture Meereen. The slave owners also have an army composed of freemen. Although there are not many of them, they are well equipped. Slaves alone cannot successfully revolt. For example, the 400 guards on the city wall are composed of 100 freeman guards and 400 slave soldiers. Jack must fight quickly if he wants to take down the city wall. Fortunately, Jack has made sufficient preparations. The 300 Unsullied under his command carried about 1,000 weapons. After quickly arming the revolutionary army, Jack led his men to rush to the city wall without stopping. The freeman guards on the city wall soon discovered the traces of Jack and others. After all, in order to save time, Jack did not cover up the movement of the march. There is a situation. There are slaves rebelling. Gather. Gather. The night watch guards hurriedly sounded the alarm. Soon the 2 sides met at the gate of the city, with 400 slave soldiers in front, and 100 freeman guards hiding behind. For this group of freeman soldiers, they only need to let the slaves be cannon fodder, and hold on until reinforcement arrive. This was their best tactic in the past, but now they forgot one thing. They were facing the revolutionary army, the slave uprising army. Brothers, the army of the Mother of Dragons is ready outside the city. Your freedom is just around the corner. Freedom has taken 99 steps towards you. You only need to take 1 step towards freedom to get it. Jack's words undoubtedly made the group of young and middle-aged slave soldiers excited, and they hesitated for a while. At this time, the officer of the Free People's Guards behind him found that the slave soldiers began to waver, and in a hurry he directly whipped them. Snap. The crisp whip sound instantly poked a hornet's nest, and the originally wavering slaves made a decision. Everyone turned around and pointed their spears at the free soldiers. Yes, that's it. Bravely defend your freedom and dignity, and crush them. With Jack's roar, the slave soldiers guarding the city gate joined the rebels one after another, roaring angrily, poking the usually high-handed free soldiers into hedgehogs. After occupying the city gate, Jack quickly had the gate opened. Karaxu, go. After receiving the order, Karaxu immediately flapped his wings and flew into the air, spewing long dragon flames. Not far away, Danny, who was waiting in full battle array, saw the scarlet dragon flames piercing the night sky and immediately ordered the entire army to advance at full speed. In just a few minutes, they rushed into Meereen. The funny thing was that the defenders in Meereen were used to being loose, and they had not assembled since the alarm bell sounded. But it was good that way, giving Jack plenty of time. Jack then met with Daenerys and asked Dany to lead the Unsullied to deal with the Great Lord, while Jack took the rest of the people to liberate the remaining slaves. The two sides had a clear division of labor. Dany led the Unsullied to start clearing out the free folk guards of Meereen, while the new free folk army that had followed Dany before began to burn, kill and loot. In response, Dany could only separate a part of the Unsullied to guard the new free folk under her command. They could rob the slave owners' money, but they were not allowed to rape and plunder, otherwise they would be killed on the spot. Time passed by minute, and countless freed slaves recovered and began to madly retaliate against the slave owners and great masters. The whole Meereen began to sound sleepless wails, and tonight was destined to be full of blood and hatred. Amid the wails of the slave owners and great masters, the sky finally turned pale, and dawn arrived. The first ray of sunlight shone from the sky, penetrating the Targaryen dragon flag on the top of the Great Golden Tower. Dany stood on the top of the pyramid, looking down at the whole Meereen with pride. In just one night, Meereen, the largest city in the Slave Bay, had become her possession, and was conquered by her. Just when Dany was proud, a pair of big hands suddenly pressed her from behind. Dany, who was startled, looked back and saw that it was Jack with a smile on his face. "What are you doing? Let me go." Dany twisted her waist uncomfortably, and she found something wrong when she twisted her waist. Her face instantly turned red. "Don't make trouble. It's daybreak. Grey Worm and the others are waiting for my order." "It's okay. I've arranged things for them. They won't come now, and my people are guarding the door. Don't panic. Lift your legs up." Dany was helpless. She knew that if she didn't do it, Jack would not give up. On the other side, Grey Worm and others gathered all the great lords, slave owners, and a large number of Meereenese and new free people under the Great Pyramid. Originally, in the original book, a large part of the great lords hid in their own pyramids to avoid the looting of the 80,000 new free people who followed Dany to the north. But now, under Jack's special instructions, the pyramids of these great lords were directly broken through by the desperate slaves, and then the Unsullied directly took over the entrances to these castle-like pyramids. After waiting for a while, Jack walked out of the Great Pyramid. Grey Worm stepped forward and asked in a low voice, "Where did your majesty go? Why didn't he come down?" "Dany is a little tired. She couldn't hold on any longer and went to rest first." "Don't worry, my people are watching. If you are worried, you can also arrange someone to guard it." Grey Worm glanced at Jack. "Of course I believe you. You are the father of dragons, but there may be enemies that have not been cleared out in the Great Pyramid. I will take people to search again." "Well, be sure to search carefully." Jack nodded. After Grey Worm led people into the Great Pyramid, Jack walked in front of everyone. "My name is Jack Poseidon. Many nobles may know me because I have another name, the Father of Dragons. I have good news to tell everyone. From today on, Meereen will become the free city-state of Meereen. There are no slaves or oppression here, only the laws in the Dragon King Code. Everyone in the free city-state of Meereen can live freely, eat white bread and drink milk freely." As soon as the voice fell, there was an overwhelming cheer from below, but the cheers were all from the new free people. The Meereenese and nobles were not happy at all. The lowly slaves had suddenly become noble freemen. This gap was unacceptable to any Meereenese or noble, especially the great lords, who looked at Jack with resentment. They thought that this idiot was on their side, but it turned out that he was Daenerys' man from the beginning to the end. Damn it. When they thought of the gifts they gave to Jack, they blushed and broke their defenses, as if they had seen Jack's stinky expression mocking them. "Stinky bitch." A great lord cursed angrily. "You accepted our gifts, but helped the mother of dragons to deal with us." The words of this great lord resonated with others, and 6 great lords followed him to curse Jack. Jack saw it clearly. Jack smiled contemptuously. "You did give gifts, but didn't I show you a dragon? A deal is a deal. Don't get mixed up with human relationships, okay, everyone." Then Jack instructed the Unsullied around him. "Take those teams of officers from the free folk guards and supervise them to lead people to plunder the pyramids of these great lords. Kill all the men, old or young, and leave the women behind. I'll be of use to them." The faces of the officers who were named changed drastically, and about 10 nobles in the noble crowd also looked ugly. Jack had already found out that their families were not powerful in Meereen and their foundation was shallow. At the same time, their families were inherited from a single line, and their sons all held official positions in the Meereen standing army. Letting their sons plunder their families would directly make them, who were already looked down upon, completely hostile to the Meereen nobles. After all, whether they were willing or not, their sons killed the people themselves. As for the fact that their good sons would rather die than surrender, it was ridiculous. It was impossible for it to happen. Greed for pleasure and fear of death were one of their advantages. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Breaking the Old Forces and Redistributing the Benefits. After the arrangement of the house raiding, all the newly freedmen looked at Jack with burning eyes, expecting him to continue to punish the slave owners. The eyes of the Meereenese and the slave-owning nobles were no longer resentful, but fearful. Of course, they still resented Jack, but they dared not show it. Jack didn't care about that. The population ratio of Meereen was very distorted, which was normal for a slave society. The entire Meereen city had a population of 800,000, of which there were 600,000 slaves. So he didn't care whether the Meereenese resented him or not. These 600,000 slaves were the labor force he valued. What's more, he had to do everything he could to plunder the wealth of these nobles to support Atlantis, so he could not coexist peacefully with this group of nobles anyway. After Danny occupied Meereen, the nobles of Meereen were divided into 3 factions. One was the conservatives, and most of the Meereen nobles belonged to this faction. When the Dragon Mother broke through Meereen, they all hid in their own pyramids, plotting unknown conspiracies. They tended to drive away the Dragon Mother. The second is the centrists, including the noble who later married Dragon Mother, the steward nobles, and the religious leader nobles. The third is the radicals, nicknamed Lord Roundhead, because this faction firmly supports Dragon Mother's reforms. In order to show their determination to get rid of the old and usher in the new, they all shaved off their Gist-style hairstyles, leaving only bald heads, so they were called the Roundhead Party. Their leader, Noble D, was called Lord Roundhead. In addition, this faction also formed an armed force, the Beast Army. After the Sons of the Harpy began their assassination activities, the Beast Army began to replace the Unsullied in street patrols, and also served as an intelligence agency similar to the CIA. These 3 factions are the same in Jack's eyes, and they are all nourishment for Atlantis. Jack took the first step in plundering wealth, because on the way here, Her Majesty the Queen was heartbroken when she saw 163 children crucified along the way. This is simply cruel and unreasonable. So the Queen decided to crucify 163 nobles on the cross as well. Let them also taste the pain of being exposed to the scorching sun and pecked by crows. Jack glanced cruelly at the group of nobles, and all the nobles looked away, not daring to look directly into Jack's eyes. Ignoring the cheers of the new freeman, Jack continued, but the Mother of Dragons is also kind. She doesn't want to do that. Otherwise, what's the difference between her and those cruel people? So the Mother of Dragons decided that in the next day, she would send people to the new freeman and select the 163 most cruel slave-owning nobles through the opinions of the new freeman and confiscate 70% of their wealth to buy food, so that everyone can have enough food. Jack originally wanted to confiscate all their wealth, but he was afraid that this group of people would jump off the wall, so he kept 30% and boiled the frog in warm water. Of course, the Mother of Dragons is not a dictator. We will secretly send people to the homes of the original freemen to collect information. You can't not choose, otherwise you may be targeted in the future. Jack looked at the middle class of Meereen with a smile. Don't worry, the nobles will also receive similar secret visits. It is absolutely confidential. Just speak boldly. All the freemen and nobles of Meereen didn't expect Jack's mind to be so vicious. Once they were selected for the secret visit, they would either die or say a name. But once this name is spoken, it means offending this person, even if you are forced to do so. Otherwise, why don't you say others, but me? In addition, From now on, any gathering of more than 10 people will be considered a riot and will be punished with a military stick. Okay, disband. Jack dismissed everyone, but only named 11 nobles. The rest of the nobles looked gloomy and scanned the 11 nobles several times before leaving. The 11 families who were named and left showed bitterness and unwillingness. They knew that they were not welcome in the first place and had been labeled as traitors. Everyone, don't be sad. Come with me, your chance to be rich is here. Jack took them to the hall of the Great Pyramid, where a huge round table was placed. In front of the round table was an extended and raised staircase with a throne on it, but the throne looked very rough and was obviously used for emergencies. Please sit down, everyone. Jack came to the front of the round table, which was the position closest to the throne, and sat down. Everyone looked at each other, and then a middle-aged man who looked about 40 years old frowned and sat directly on Jack's right. Jack smiled in his heart and took note of the man's performance. Mando did not expect that Jack would see his determination. Then everyone realized that this seat seemed to be not simple, and they all took their seats. Jack crossed his hands on the table and smiled. Since everyone has taken a seat, it means that you are willing to stand in line, right? Everyone was silent. What else could they do if they did not stand in line? Even if the mother of dragons took people away now and Meereen restored the old order, they would be excluded by the nobles and their family would decline. Since silence means tacit consent, please don't be so depressed. Those arrogant old nobles will never accept you, and you will never be able to squeeze into their circle. In this case, why don't we redistribute the benefits? We form a circle, exclude these old nobles, and become the core of power. Jack's words startled everyone. They really hadn't thought about this problem before. Because of their lack of family background, they desperately flattered those old nobles just to get their recognition. Seeing the light flashing in everyone's eyes, Jack knew that they were moved. After all, no one wants to be a licking dog. And Jack understood that no matter where, the interests of the old forces and the new forces will never be distributed fairly. Otherwise Europe in the past life would not have accidentally fired guns into consecutive terrible world wars. Everyone, I'm the father of dragons, the hand of the queen of the mother of dragons, and the commander of the navy. I have the right to make decisions on many things. For example, I have carefully observed the layout of Meereen and decided to divide Meereen into 13 special districts for management. As for the candidates for management, in order to stabilize the situation in Meereen, I decided to select local nobles from Meereen to govern. Jack knocked on the round table in front of him, and the meaning was self-evident. Sure enough, Jack's words made their eyes light up, and they also understood what Jack meant. The reorganization of the power center will be carried out around this round table. Then Jack clapped his hands, and Missandei appeared with a stack of papers, and gave each noble a piece. It was the planning map of the 13 districts of Meereen, including the population distribution and prosperity of each district, which was clearly written on it. Everyone, this is the planning map. You can go back first. Someone will notify you to see me alone in the next time. I will determine which district you will manage, based on your talents, wealth. After tomorrow, you will be the power core of Meereen. Chapter 50, Building a New Economic System. After everyone left, Jack returned to his rented courtyard. After all, he had just ruled Meereen, and was collecting bribes in the Great Pyramid. It was not a good influence. After returning to his rented mansion, Vittoria saw Jack coming back and immediately asked, "How are you? Are you not hurt? You didn't send anyone back to pass on a message." "I was worried to death." Jack smiled and touched her little head, comforting her. "Don't worry, who am I? Only I hurt others. How can anyone hurt me?" After comforting Vittoria, Jack sent someone to contact the 11 nobles. He had been eyeing these nobles for a long time, and his family addresses were also clear. Time passed, and it was already evening in a blink of an eye. Jack summoned the last noble, Mando Grew. Mando came to visit, not only bringing 50,000 gold, but also countless gems and gold ornaments, with a total value of at least 120,000. This money is definitely a huge loss for a small noble like Mando. Jack immediately stood up to greet him. "We are all family. Why do you bring so many gifts?" "You are joking, Prime Minister." It is precisely because we are family that I come to visit with some insignificant things. You and Her Majesty the Queen have liberated the slave bay, and it must be very hard. Bringing some gifts to visit is also my little token of my appreciation. Please be sure to accept them." Mando's face was full of respect and admiration. Even though the other party was a teenager, he still did not feel awkward at all. Haha, look at what you said. Then I'd rather obey than be respectful. I'll accept this small gift. Come on, sit down and prepare some wine and food, Vitelli. Okay, I'll go right away. Mando smiled on his face, but was furious in his heart. This small gift cost him 90% of his family's wealth, and he almost emptied the house. Then I will take the liberty to sit down and thank the Prime Minister for his hospitality. Why call me Prime Minister? Just call me Jack in private. Don't be restrained. That won't work. You are a favorite of the Queen and the Queen's right-hand man. Respecting you is the most basic thing. Okay, then I won't say much. Let's drink first and the dishes will be served later. The two of them talked happily, like old friends for many years. Mando kept silent about the allocation of the 13 special districts, while revealing information about Meereen to Jack. After the dishes were served, the two drank even more happily until the moon completely illuminated the earth at night. Jack took the initiative to say, "Mancho, you have also seen the plan of the 13th district. I wonder which one you like. It's all up to you. I only have one small request," Mando said cautiously. "Oh, tell me." Jack motioned Mando to speak boldly. "Prime Minister, you are young and promising, while my useless son is idle in the army all day. Can you take him with you, let him gain some knowledge, and learn from you?" Mando said with an embarrassed look on his face. "Is that so? No problem. I remember your son, Evan Grew, right? It's his honor that you know his name, sir." Jack didn't expect that this old guy would let his son follow him. If this fell into the eyes of other nobles, it would definitely be a naked betrayal. "No problem. Just let him go to the Great Pyramid to find me tomorrow." "Okay, thank you. You've worked hard." Just after sending off the happy Mando, Miss Andy came to the door. "Sir, the king called you and said there is something important to discuss." "I'll go right away." Soon Jack came to the top of the Great Pyramid and saw Daenerys, who was refreshed. It was obvious that she was in high spirits after a good sleep. Jack came and sat down opposite Daenerys. Dany asked with a piercing look in her eyes, "I heard that you acted in the name of the Queen's hand?" Someone had already reported everything that happened today to her. "Why, you don't want to? Then I'll leave." "No, I didn't say I didn't want to. Tomorrow I will officially grant you the position of Queen's hand. In addition, I decided to stay in Meereen to learn the way of governance. Are you willing to assist me? Astapor and Yunke are in trouble, right?" Jack asked first. "How did you know?" Daenerys was very surprised. "You know, no one informed Jack. I guessed that the slave owners in Yunke are not dead. After you leave, slavery will definitely be restored. The ruling council you left in Astapor is even more fragile." Dany pursed her pink lips and said with some shame and anger, "Yunke did restore slavery after I left, and Astapor was also controlled by a butcher named Cleon." At this time, Dany had realized that slavery could not be eliminated by military strikes alone. That's normal, but it's not what we should be thinking about right now. The first thing we need to solve is the economy. We need to build a new economic system. After we free the slaves, no merchants will be willing to come to Meereen to do business. Dany didn't know what to do for a moment, so she could only tentatively say, "Perhaps we can sell salt, copper, Giscari wine, olives, and olive oil." Jack shook his head. If these things had enough profit, this place wouldn't be called Slavers Bay. Copper is worthless, and salt and Giscari wine don't make much profit either. The only things that make a considerable profit are olives and olive oil, and wine is barely okay. Dany frowned, but the olive trees have been cut down by the slave owners, as have the grapevines. We simply can't restart these trades in a short period of time. That's the problem. Without the slave trade, we can basically only sit back and eat, relying on the money you robbed from Astapor to make ends meet. How much do you have now? About 8.6 million gold dragons, enough for us to hold on for a while and figure out a solution. If there's no war, we can indeed hold on for a while, But what if there is a war? Are you saying that the slave owners of Young K will attack us? The slave owners in Young K are just one of the forces. You liberated me, Reen. After a few months, the news will spread. Slaves in other places will definitely be ready to move after knowing it, especially Volantis, who are all allies of Young K. At this time, Danny realized that the situation might be more serious than she thought. Then do you have any solution? After Jack didn't speak for a long time, Danny narrowed her eyes slightly and used the beauty trick directly, slipping into Jack's arms. Since you said it, there must be a way, tell me. However, Jack, who had already had fun in the morning, was still able to enter the sage state at this time and was unmoved. Seeing that Jack was unmoved, Danny continued to act coquettishly. Then what do you want? Money. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.